Okay, we're going to try this again. I am an idiot, and I totally forgot that when I plug in my auxiliary jack into my laptop, after I have OBS open, it does not record desktop audio because I'm an idiot. So here we are again, since this is going to be the only recording saved. Sorry, it's been 6 weeks since we last did our pod. I was traveling for the last 3 weeks of the last 6, and so life gets in the way, obviously. And I'm just going to, again, officially put it on here that I'm pissed off we did the draft while I was gone. And also state, still not sure if Matt is going to be joining us tonight because he is not available currently, but he might be in the next 20 to 30 minutes. So he might jump on, he might not, I'm not sure. But as some of you already heard, I have a special treat. I have my dear friend, HSTL legend, Vikingmoe here on the pod with us, and one of the best HSTL drafters there probably has ever been. Eric, how you doing, buddy?
Good, thanks. I don't know if I deserve that title, but I drafted a team in quite a while, and I don't know if that was the case. I'm surprised that while you were out of state, you didn't ask me to draft for you. I think your team would have looked a lot better than it is.
Okay, you know what? We're going to leave that one alone, and we can just stick to the review here instead of you talking smack about my decision making, even though I didn't make any decisions except one. So anyway, we're gonna make this a lot quicker this time than last time, simply because there were less rounds. Thank you, Tekmobo, and so there's obviously less to talk about, and I'm gonna ramble a lot less, specifically because I wasn't really part of the draft at all. And to be honest with you guys, this is the first time I've even looking at the sheet. I didn't even look at the sheet after the draft was over. I don't even know exactly who's on my team until right now, just looking at it. So we're going to go through this and kind of give our 2 cents. And that's pretty much it. But before we go forward, Eric, anything going on that you want to talk about? You've kind of been out of the Tekmo scene. You didn't make it to Madison. You haven't been to any tournaments. Are we going to see you anywhere in the near future or anything like that in the Tekmo world?
Yeah, well, I'm playing a little bit online with tournaments and things, but yeah, right now I'm pursuing my MBA with healthcare focus, so between that and a wife and 2 kids, it's hard to kind of get up to stuff here, but I'd like to make it back to Madison. I'm hoping this next year, and I think I'm still on the waiting list for HSTL, but now it's so popular again that I might be on it for a while, so I just better get my name on there. Maybe by the time it comes up to me, I'll be able to play.
Sure. Well, here's hoping. It's weird. We had a whole bunch of people drop all at once, and then it kind of go ebbs and flows. It's kind of interesting how that works. I'm not really sure, but we definitely love to have you. There's not many people who use a linebacker as well as you, and can do defense allowing less than 200 yards a game with no DB. So, okay, so
DBs are overrated.
Yeah. I don't know about all that. I'll tell you, I had a dumpster fire of a defense besides Jerome Brown and Manny Hendricks, and I put up some pretty good numbers, especially in the playoffs this year. I just got a little bit lucky against Tekmobo when QB Browns completed everything, and a little bit unlucky against older Tekmo, also known as Diaz, when QB Browns didn't complete anything. So, all right, we are going to start just because I want to talk about the first overall pick. We are going to start with the NFC East because, and I know you probably have a lot to talk about it, Eric, but I just have to say I can't tell you how inexplicable it is to me. Anybody could have the number 1 overall pick and not take QB Eagles. I mean, literally, if you aren't going to take QB Eagles, don't stay at number 1. That's all I'm saying. The fact that QB Eagles somehow fell to Rico, which is going to, I feel sorry for the whole NFC Central, but the fact that Rico got QB Eagles is twofold. A, that he wasn't taken number 1, and B, all of you round 0 idiots who let Rico somehow pick number 2. Just makes no sense to me whatsoever. Before we go into all this, Eric, what do you want to say about not taking QB Eagles number 1 overall?
Well, I'm glad to hear that round 0's back. But aside from that, I think It doesn't make sense to me. There's been times when the Chicago DBs have been available together as a group before. I think they were taken second overall that year by Jesus/Chaos. And I think that's too high as well. But at least QB Eagles went first that time. I will tell you that I think my second season ever in HSTL, I had a terrible first season, got owned as kind of an online noob, and I got the first overall pick. I did not take QB Eagles. I took this super tandem that involved multiple amazing players, and it was basically 4 players for one. I thought it was justified, still do. Diaz might have some input on that, but right now, to not take in this format QB Eagles, your whole offense in one doesn't make any sense to me at all.
I think the only way I would not take QB Eagles in any format is if I got an elite running back, an elite wide receiver, an elite linebacker, and an elite DB all at the same time. I mean, is that the kind of super tandem you were talking about that you got, or?
I got it was a Chicago tandem, so I got Mike Singletary, and I got Johnny Bailey, and then I got their 50 max speed offensive lineman, and something else. It was something else.
See, I mean, kudos to you, but that definitely would not have been enough for me. I mean, QB Eagles literally is an offense in one, and especially if you know how to use them. I mean, going in at Madison, watching like Mort and Gatz and so on use Eagles, it's something of a spectacle. And then obviously with the ground and pound of Rico and his just, usually flawless decision making and just, constant QB scrambling or whatever. Once again, I mean, specifically War Machine, just because he is obviously, the one of the top 2 NFC representatives, at least this season. Actually, both of them came from the NFC Central. I just feel bad for him. It's going to be hard for him to get back to where he is now. But anyway, so let's start with...
Go ahead.
The
player was, by the way, so it was Stinson, Singletary, 50 max speed offensive lineman, and Bailey.
I mean, I still don't... I don't know. It's still not enough. If it was a faster DB, I'd be all about it. But Stinson, as I said all last review, and I'll say it this time, and it happened when it was Diaz versus Gatz in their playoff game today. 44-56 guys are just slow enough, or just fast enough to be too slow, or whatever line that Tadeos and I used over and over again. It was on full display when he couldn't even catch up to a 44 MS Fennerty when Gatz was doing some Jedi Houdini mind tricks with. I mean, what Gatz did in one drive on 2 separate 4th and long runs are just like literally. I just sat there with my jaw open just watching what he was able to do with a 44. You should go back and watch his stream video, watch his first drive, and just go look at what he did on that drive. It was something to see. So anyway, so let's start with Phoenix. I'm gonna on the stream. You guys obviously see the screen that I'm looking at. I'm going to try to go between the team screen and then the pick screen to see like what he took in what order and kind of go from there. Obviously, we all know Chicago DBs were picked first, and while I personally think of all the DBs anyway, it's a tiny bit overrated tandem simply because I think they're too slow. There's other DB tandems I personally, if I was going to take it, would have taken before that. Specifically, I'd probably say I probably would have taken Tampa Bay. If I was going to take any DB tandem, and Eric, maybe you can correct me if I'm correct or put in your 2 cents, I think Tampa Bay is probably the best DB tandem, or maybe just because overall they have the best drones. I mean, I guess you can make a case for San Francisco because of Lott and Waymer, or make a case for Houston. I suppose they have good drones, or make a case for maybe Washington, but maybe not, just because they're fast, but they don't have great hands. What do you think?
Well, I think I agree. I think because of the drones, Tampa Bay gives you an elite player and then some really good quality drones. Same with Houston, but obviously Haddix is better than Johnson. So I kind of like that. And don't sleep on Pittsburgh. I think they have some great drones, and obviously an elite guy if Woodson's more your style with the hitting power and things. So I mean, I kind of like those. There's nothing wrong with San Francisco's if you like to have two options, for different formations and to stop different running plays and things. But if you want one elite guy with good drones, Tampa Bay has got to be it.
Yeah,
got to be right after.
So we got so just going across here. So he's got the Dallas QBs with LVP Troy Aikman. I have to. It's going to be obligatory. I have to mention that I think 4 drafts ago, I don't know how many drafts ago it was, we had JP the Bowler take Troy Aikman in round 2 of an HSTL draft. And he sucked that year. He sucks every year. He kind of sucked for Diaz this year, but sometimes didn't. I think I think Aikman and Stauffer bombed it out to Ryzen for like 400 yards against me in one of our games. But he's got LVP Aikman. He has 0 running game with the New England running backs, the worst running backs in the game. He's got the Miami wide receivers who are just not fast enough. I mean, you do have 50-63 duper, but 44. I don't really know what the receptions do for you when you've got a 44 PC QB. And then the Houston OL is good. It's good OL, but there's no hitting power because of the tight ends, because they're just wide receivers. He's got the Miami defensive line, which is average, but he does have the elite kicking game of Miami. And his linebackers, which I remember, we have to go back and look at the picks. There was some discussion on Discord after he took the Raiders linebackers instead of much better linebackers that were on the board. So looking at this team, I'll let you go first, Eric. What do you think? How do you think this is going to go?
Well, it's pretty simple to me. This is a message that everyone needs to hear. The overdrafting of Troy Aikman needs to stop. It just needs to stop. There's no reason for it. Why do you take what's essentially a 44 quarterback, even though he's 50-44, in the second round or the third round, when you can have a 44 quarterback like rounds later? I know there's only 7 rounds in this draft, but it's a little bit different. But it's too soon. And basically, so you have the defense, right, with the Bears secondary. That's basically all you have. And then on offense, because you have no running game, you basically have a back and B offense. That's all you have. And you're just going to go back and throw bombs with Troy Aikman all day because no one's going to pick run against you ever. So it doesn't make any sense to me. And it's going to be a really long season because there's just the offense is so one-dimensional. And the defense is still a mess despite those DBs. So,
yeah, I'm actually filtering the picks page just to see the order he took stuff, just out of curiosity, and it looks like it went the deep. So he did take. I was right. He took the Dallas QBs in round 2. So he was picked. Well, I mean, it could be round 3. He was picked 228. And then the Miami wide receivers were 3-1. The Raiders linebackers were 428. And we should look and see what was available at that point. And then obviously so on and so forth. And the running backs were the last pick. I don't think we did a sim this one, but maybe if I'm wrong, War Machine can Discord me and let me know because he was my draft chief. So I'm going to go down to his pick in round 4 just to see who he took, what linebackers were left. It looks like the New Orleans linebackers were left, and he still took the Raiders.
The Jets.
The Cleveland linebackers don't really help.
New Orleans, sorry.
Yeah, it looks like New Orleans is probably would have been my pick for linebackers. Or even, Green Bay, just to have Harris. It looks like he chose linebackers with no studs and high interception instead of whatever. But anyway, we don't have to spend too much time on Phoenix. Going back down the line. So like you said, I agree with you. It's going to be a tough season. He's going to have a tough time moving the ball. And he's going to kind of have to pray that his DBs pick people off. Now, going down to the next person in the AFC East, Jesus, maybe the only secondary that's going to give Jesus trouble, throw to Sterling Sharp, because as you see, Jesus has Buffalo's QBs, the Rams running backs, Houston wide receiver. No, I'm looking at the wrong one. I'm sorry. He's got Houston running backs, Green Bay wide receivers, KC line, which Dolo will tell you is amazing. KC D-line and kicker and punter, which is their elite kicking game. Seattle linebackers and Dallas DBs. And I am proof positive you can make the playoffs and make it to the divisional round Manning Hendricks. So, Manning Hendricks. It looks like Jesus is going to have a back and B season. QB Bills to Sharp. I think that the Chicago DBs will have trouble keeping up with Sharp, specifically if Sharp goes into good or obviously excellent, just because they're a little slow. I think there's going to be some hot routes going on there. I will say that QB Bills has nobody else to throw to because the rest of the team, there's just no hands. I mean, they're 50. Yeah, they might have 50 receptions, but they're slow. So it looks like that, in my opinion, Jesus is going to be chucking it to Sterling Sharp. He's going to have a lot of protection for QB Bills, and it looks like he's just going to have to play spirited D and really depend on his ISO grappling. And in my opinion, and correct me if you think I'm wrong, I think he's just going to get in a lot of shootouts where he's just going to be bombing to Sharp. What do you think?
I think it could be. I don't think he has to resort to that. He could use Low White at the second receiver spot or even at tight end. And he has a number of 38 max speed running backs that he can play conditions with to at least keep people honest. I think he obviously, being a bit of a Dallas homer, probably has a lot of experience using Dallas's secondary, and I think there's plenty of speed there to get stops and at least stop people's running games with his tapping, and could probably call some passes. So I think it works for him. I don't know if I've seen him with such a pass-heavy team before, but I think the offense is going to be great. Just a matter of getting some stops. And I think he has just enough with his skill to make that happen.
I agree with you. I think he said this too. This is his first season, and I don't even know how long he's actually had an elite quarterback. So we'll see how that goes for him. Going next down the list, we have Washington with Barletti. Barletti had QB Eagles last season, so that's a big departure going down to the Jets QBs. But Jets QBs give you two manable QBs. You got Prime's homeboy Ken O'Brien, as well as Tony Eason to play conditions with. The big grab here is Bo Jackson for the Raiders. So interesting that Bo Jackson dropped to 7th. That's got to be really low. Bo Jackson dropped to 7th in the draft. And he's got the San Diego wide receivers, which once again, you really just have, Anthony Miller, and that's it. And then you got the giant O-line, which is decent, and the tight ends. Marvaro's got great hitting power, decent hands, but he's slow as hell. And then you've got Seattle defensive line kicker punter, so you've got Jacob Green in his 50-63. And then you've got Indy linebackers, which gives you absolutely nothing. And then you got the Rams DBs, which gives you no manable people, but does give you good drones with high interceptions. So I got to say, it's the Jacob Green show on defense. Maybe Manning, is it Newsome or Humphrey who's manable, who's 38-50 and can be manable if they are in good. But yeah, it's basically
they're both the same.
Yeah, it's basically the Jacob Green show on defense, which I've learned the hard way. Running a D from the defensive line is effective because you get like a nickel coverage guy, but it sucks because you can't stop any hot route, and it really sometimes, if you're not manning the right guy, you can get gobbled up on runs. But it's going to be, it's kind of interesting. He went from having the most elite QB in the game last season to now the most elite running back in the game this season. It's going to be interesting to see. He actually, I think Bo Jackson is going to make the QB and receiver tandem better. I will say too that if I was him, I would put Marcus Allen at the other wide receiver spot, but that's just me. I don't see a world where you're going to run with Marcus Allen instead of Bo Jackson. But what do you think?
Well, I think it's a steal to get Bo Jackson at 7, and then when you get Marcus Allen with him, that's pretty crazy. And I agree, wide receivers where Marcus Allen needs to go to stretch the field. But I think you've seen a number of times where O'Brien is paired with Bo Jackson. I think there's a number of seasons had that. Obviously, people are going to be open often for O'Brien, and it's nice having Eason too for conditions. So it's a pretty good situation, and I'm glad he didn't take the Tampa Bay O-line. I think it was back-to-back seasons where Bo Jackson had the Tampa Bay O-line, which just doesn't make sense. So it's good to see a decent O-line. And yeah, defense will be tough. I mean, you can play conditions with Newsome and Humphrey. I hope one goes into good so you have somebody. Otherwise, it will be interesting because there's not much else there. So,
Interesting to note, looking at the picks page. So the Chicago DBs went first overall. Then you had your running QBs in the exact order you would assume of QB Eagles, Montana, Moon, QB Bills. And then surprisingly, Rob at 6 took the Houston wide receivers, which I just coming from experience of someone who built way too many wide receivers in CTL, having an abundance of wide receivers to me is kind of a waste. I know. I just always end up throwing to the same guy. Maybe it's just me. So I probably wouldn't have taken them, but it's to each his own. Rob has really gotten down with the passing game, so we'll see how this goes for him. And then I think I would have taken, what would you? I guess the Raiders is the best running back pick. And then Chicago. So the Raiders were the first running back tandem taken. So anyway, let's go back down the line here. Who do we have next? The Giants, Dolo. So he's got Whiskey Wade and Lollipop Gannon at QB. That's going to be fun. I think the only person in the league who is good with Wade Wilson is Zur. He's got the New Orleans running backs, which provide him a litany of options between wide receiver, tight end, whatever he wants to do with them, with the New Orleans running backs. And obviously we know what Dolo can do, especially since he has the best O-line in the game in Miami. I think that this is going to be a very big ground and pound season for Dolo, playing conditions with Mays, Fenerty, and Hilliard, and whatever else he wants to do. Probably put Hayward at tight end. He's got the Philadelphia wide receivers, which, I think the fastest guy is Barnett at 38 max speed. So, what are you going to do there? And then on defense, he's got the New Orleans defensive line, which is good. The Cleveland linebackers, which really, Tony Blaylock, while underrated, doesn't really give you much. I think Mike Johnson is manable, but he's only 31 RS, so he's not lurchable. I think, Eric, you were the one who taught me that you really need 38 RS to lurch properly. And then rounding it out with the Cincinnati DBs. So he's got Fulcher. He's got his one-man defense. But as we know, the rest of the DBs on Cincinnati are pretty subpar. So I think Dolo's going to be fine. I think that I don't think he's going to be dumb enough to make poor throws against, for example, Phoenix. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of JJ picks in Dolo's future. I think he's going to run the ball a lot. I don't really see much in his division so far where people are going to be able to stop him running the ball, to be honest. I'd say Jesus probably kind of just because of his tapping ability with Isaac Holt and Manny Hendricks. But what do you think with this Dolo team we got going on here?
Well, Dolo loves 44 quarterbacks, so he got that, and so that's a good get. Obviously, there's the Fulcher pick, but his drones aren't as good, but Fulcher's a different animal. But again, that's where I think I would have probably taken Tampa Bay before this one here, maybe even Houston as well. But certainly Tampa Bay's DBs before Cincinnati's here. But Fulcher's just a little different, has a different advantage, so I get that. But I would have liked to see more speed on offense. So you go defense, and then you should be working on your offense. And the fastest guy he's got is Hilliard at 50, and then a bunch of 44s and 38s. So I think it's going to be a grindy offense, and then really just dependent on Fulcher to get stops and get turnovers.
Are these team pages right? Because on the picks page, it has Tundra Yeti taking Tampa Bay DBs, but on the team page, it has Tadeos having Tampa Bay DBs.
They both. So Tadeos has Indy's DBs.
Yep.
And
Yeah, let's fix this. Okay, I feel better.
And Tundra Yeti has Tampa Bay. That was
Yes.
one error I didn't notice.
So yeah, I agree with you. I absolutely would have taken Tampa Bay over Fulcher just because of the rest, especially having QB Bills in my division. But that's me, and that's just what I would have done. But I mean, I think Dolo has demonstrated he can be a one-man band, although he's really showed exceptional linebacker ability. And I forgot to mention, and I stupidly so, I did not remember that the Miami offensive line comes with Jensen and comes with Edmonds, so he's kind of got his jumbo squad all set. Like, my guess is he's going to have, whoever at running back, Hayward at tight end, and they'll probably have Edmonds and Jensen both in a wide receiver, to be honest with you. So he's going to have...
That's fine. It's just really slow.
Yeah, he's gonna have a slow offense when it comes to wide receivers, but he's gonna have a blocking galore with the best offensive line in the game, and basically tight ends and jumbo guys everywhere. So, for what it's worth. Okay, moving on down to who do we have next? Is it Philly? Is Philly the last one? Yeah.
Yeah.
So down to Turbo and Philly. So now we have another elite tapper, 2 elite tappers in one division. So we have Turbo. He's got the New Orleans QBs, which gives you 4K with Walsh to play conditions with. I had 4K for a season. I sucked at it. I think I just suck in general, but I'm definitely bad with bad QBs for whatever reason. I had a nice little run in other leagues using a 44-44 guy, but I've been pretty bad. But we're not going to talk about what I have to deal with this season yet. So he's got the Phoenix running backs, which give you Johnny Johnson. I heard a funny story. It was either at Madison or at Tundra Bowl. Some guy, or maybe it was Detroit, some guy just is obsessed with Johnny Johnson. I forgot what they called him. And he literally just would play games and just want to use the Cardinals because he just loves Johnny Johnson and was obsessed with him. Someone will have to remind me of that story I was told. He's got the Washington wide receivers, which actually gives you sneaky good Sanders, Gary Clark, and Art Monk to play at tight end if you want because of his hitting power. And then he's got the Jets OL with the Jets tight ends, which, it gives you slow guys, but big guys, or he's one of them, with Boyer. And then we are on to the Cleveland defensive line, which is maybe below average. Green Bay linebackers, which gives him Harris to put at LB4. And then the Houston DBs, which is probably, in my opinion, my second DB choice or third, and one of the top 5 DB choices. It's probably in whatever order you want. As you already said, Tampa Bay, Houston, San Francisco, Chicago, and Cincinnati because of Fulcher. Maybe Pittsburgh is up there too. So top 6, whatever. I think that. Go ahead.
He got Houston's DBs at pick 21. I mean, that's pretty phenomenal value, really, when the last really great tandem that included elite DB was the next pick in San Diego. So, I mean, huge value there. Great drones, obviously an elite DB, and let him really focus the rest of the draft on his offense. I think you get good value with the Washington wide receivers, and the offense is balanced with the 50 max speed guy, and so it's not bad. It's definitely not bad, but I think getting Houston that late is pretty awesome. To get that kind of a steal.
Yeah, I would probably. I'm not looking at the picks, and that's what you're on here for. So I agree with you. That is specifically because if I couldn't get Tampa Bay, Houston would probably be my next pick, to be honest with you. So I would say that Turbo is going to do pretty well with this team, with his tapping ability. He has all the tools he needs. His defense is his front 7, except for Harris, is pretty weak. But we'll see what happens. So obviously got to watch out trying to throw bombs against Phoenix because of the JJ picks, or against Fulcher for that matter. But yeah, so that's pretty much the NFC East draft. It's been kind of just the last thing I'll say one last time. I can't believe QB Eagles was not picked first. So So why don't we just kind of go down to the NFC Central, simply because that's the second pick overall. We'll kind of do it that way. Rico, because of round 0, inexplicably moved up to number 2. Looking at the round 0 tab, Rico, if everyone stayed in their same spot, would have been number 7. So that's a big departure from. I can't believe everyone above him, except for one person. Everyone above him moved down, except every single person above him moved down. Every one of them. Just crazy to me. So anyway, I guess moved up because Drake. But I mean, Drake had an opportunity to go to. Hawk had an opportunity to go to. Nobody went to. Tundra Yeti at 6 had an opportunity to go to. He went 16. I mean, Big Red went 20. Casual went 15. I understand. Who knows with this draft? He's been up there a lot, so I can see why he moved. But man, and then obviously the Mac stayed at 1 and didn't pick QB Eagles. So anyway, going back to Rico. I mean, I'm scared of this team, to be honest with you. He's got QB Eagles with his grinded out philosophy. He's going to be dirty with them. He's got San Francisco's running backs, which gives you a 56 reception jumbo guy and Rathman at tight end. He can have play conditions with Craig and Carter and Sydney. We're both 44 MS, so that's great. He's got the Washington OL, which is big. Their tight ends are weak, but it gives you a good kick returner with 81 if you don't want to use Rathman because of injury. 81 ball control. His defensive line, while the other two guys suck, he's got 69 HP Jerry Ball. Although I think Eddie Murray is a crappy kicker, or pretty close to being crappy. He's
really bad.
Yeah, he's got the Rams. I think he 25 kicking ability or 31. He's either 25 or 31. I know he's not 19 with Del Greco and Lansford, but
yeah.
Yeah, but I think he's 25 or 31. And then you've got the Rams linebackers, which really just gives you Kevin Green, which is great, and he's got the Philly DBs. So it sucks that he's got Andre Waters. We'll see if that's going to cost him based on who the quarterbacks are in his division. But it does give him, Eric Allen and Ben Smith to roam the secondary with. So he's got options. He's got a defensive line option he can man. He's got a linebacker he can man, obviously, and he's got 2 DBs he can man. And, I'll tell you, I've had Wes Hopkins before. I don't care that he's slow, except for getting destroyed on burn routes by 31 MS guys. He literally always somehow trails wide receiver perfectly and is very good at making the JJ block. It's just what he does. I think the season I had him, he had like 5 drone interceptions on JJ picks. So.
That's fantastic. But so is this team, in my opinion. I mean, this team is awesome. It's just, you have QB Eagles, which is already awesome. But then to get San Francisco's running backs, and I think if he's smart, he'll put Craig at wide receiver because he could use some speed there to stretch and use your 244 running backs. And then obviously Rathman probably at tight end. Washington's O-line, he'll have all day. And then, you can use conditions between Brown and McGee at wide receiver for the other one. But basically, you got to put Craig at wide receiver to really balance out the offense. So the offense is amazing.
Yeah,
the defense. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, go ahead. You can keep going.
Well, I think the defense. You got like Ball who can be disruptive, and Green who can be disruptive, and then the Phillies. DBs with the rushing power of Eric Allen and Ben Smith, they're both usable. You can hide Waters at DB2 probably pretty effectively. And it's a complete team, and there's really not. You maybe like to see more speed in wide receiver. You can't have everything, and I think you can still make that work with Craig at wide receiver.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree. This team is scary. It's even more scary with Rico being the guy manning it. I am very happy that I am not playing the NFC Central this season. I just gotta say that out loud. That makes me ecstatic. So, moving on down to
Detroit.
Oh, I would actually say the one thing I was going to say, but I almost interrupted you, was that he isn't going to have any CCs. Like, even with QB Eagles 69 pass control, there's just really no CCs that are going to happen on this team. Not that he needs it, but just saying. That's all I wanted to say. Okay.
Fair enough.
We're on to Detroit. So Casualty moved down to the middle of the pack. So he's got New England QBs, which basically gives you Super Lollipop Beach Ball, Gannon, and I'm thinking of Minnesota, Grogan. And then he's got Mark Wilson, who can be his 44 PC guy, but I think he's only 30. Is he 30?
38.
He's 38. So, yeah, he's not your 44 guy. He's got the KC running back, so he's pretty much going to be relying on Okoye for running, maybe getting some popcorns, and then probably because he doesn't necessarily need to put Ward at tight end, but he could because he's got the San Francisco OL, which is great, and their tight end, so he could put Jones at wide receiver 2, and he's got options. Whatever he wants to do, he's got options. He's got really slow wide receivers, unfortunately. I mean, Clark being his fastest guy at 44 MS. He does have 19 MS with 75 receptions, dick, but he doesn't have anyone to throw it to him to make it worthwhile. So, but, Eric, I would love for you to give your dissertation if you want on, because I use it all the time now on my teams, why it's so important to have speed differentials between wide receiver 1 and wide receiver 2, or basically maybe tight end as well, just based on whoever the two receivers that are flying or doing the fly routes, because I'll tell you, it makes a big difference.
It does. Maybe not so much with these quarterbacks on this team, but in a word, it's spacing, right? And if you get a really fast guy with someone like Dick with his 19 max speed on the bottom, it allows you to sneak in passes when you have one DB trying to cover both of them deep. But you need to have the passing speed, at least a decent amount, to kind of really capitalize on that. And really, he doesn't have that. So not as big of a factor here. But something that I always try to look at, and I'm okay with having a slow guy down at wide receiver too, just to have that speed disparity.
Yeah. So moving on, he's got the Minnesota defensive line, which I believe just basically gives you Dolman as a manable guy, potentially. I think Dolman might be manable. The Atlanta linebackers, which gives you absolutely a big pile of turd at linebacker, and then Washington DBs, which gives you 2 manable guys, and Green or Mayhew, depending on your flavor. My guess, you're doing Green more for a tiny bit more speed, and obviously less hands than Mayhew, who has better hands. So, so that's pretty much casual. I'm not sure what's going to happen with him. It looks like his offense has some holes just because of the QB, I would say. You don't have the right QB to maximize your receivers, but maybe Okoye will take some pressure off, so we'll see. Moving down to Tampa Bay, Big Red is now in the Central. He was moved. And so he has Washington QBs. I hate Rippin just because I can't stand 6 MS. Plus, I think Rippin is only 30. Is Rippin 31 or is he 44? Rippin's 44, but he's only 6 MS. And then Humphrey.
Rippin is 38-44.
Oh, and then Humphreys is 44-38. That's what it is.
You got it. Right.
I actually, when I was younger and I used Washington, I always used Humphreys just because of the MS, how much faster he was, and his increased passing speed. And we have the Washington running backs, which gives you Ernest Biner, and obviously all their 81 BC guys. So you can put Riggs at tight end. You can use Mitchell, and I think I'm missing one. I don't remember which one I'm missing. I'm blanking. It's late in the East Coast. And then he's got the Indy wide. Oh, yeah, Calvin Bryant. So great. Yeah, use him for conditions or a 2 running back offense or what have you. He's got the Indy wide receivers, which are actually kind of underrated just because they're on such a crappy team. They're slow-ish, but they have good hands. But once again, he doesn't have a quarterback to throw to them that takes advantage of the hands. He's got the Raiders offensive line and tight end. So Horton is good. He's an above average tight end in this game, and the Raiders O-line's decent. And then on defense, the Giant defensive line is average. The KC linebackers are strong as all hell. I always found, and maybe I'll let you talk about it more because you're a linebacker guy, but I always found that whenever I played with KC, I always ended up manning Snow instead of Thomas because the whole offense flowed to Thomas to try to take him out of the game. And Snow is sneaky good, plus you can use Snow in nickel coverage, which you can't use Thomas because of his 19 interception. So before you go into that, though, just rounding it out, he's got the Minnesota secondary, which gives you Browner and Lee, two manable guys. Browner obviously is considerably better, and then I think the other two are kind of a poo-poo platter. So why don't you talk about how you think he should use the KC linebacker, since linebackers are your thing?
Well, he really has too much on defense. Really, I mean, you can't. Do you use DT? Do you use Snow? Do you use Browner? Do you use Lee? I mean, he's got versatility, but he paid the price on offense. With having not a ton of great speed, not much at quarterback, and Raiders, I guess O-line gives them a kick returner with Riggs, a super kick returner, but you went so heavy on defense that in such an offensive-driven league, you're not going to be able to maximize that because you're not going to be able to use them all at once. So, but yeah, I tend to have the same thing with OG KC because they tend to try to isolate or double team DT, and you're using Snow better for coverage anyway. So, at least maybe you can block some picks or some kicks or field goals. I don't know, but I think maybe not the best thought through team, especially hurting offensively here.
Sure, I would probably tend to agree with that, but we'll see how Big Red does. Moving down to the defending NFC Central champ and also one of the guys playing in the NFC Championship game for season 44 tomorrow against his NFC, who is leaving after the season, counterpart, Odell. War Machine, he, looking at his team here, he's got the Tampa Bay QBs, which obviously gives you the versatility of the 31 MS, the Testaverde, even though he is 31 passing speed, he has the 56 pass control. Denver running backs, so he's got a fast offense, obviously, when it comes to either scramble running or Bobby Humphrey. He's got the Tampa Bay wide receivers, which basically gives you the 44-63 carrier, and that's pretty much it. And then the Dallas offensive line tight ends. Dallas offensive line, in my opinion, is a little overrated based on the rating system we use in HSTL, but going by total hitting power or whatever we do, just simply because they have like one huge guy, I think it's Nate Newton at like 75 HP. And they do have a 38 guy, which you can hide, but I just don't like having 38 HP guys on my offensive line if I can help it. But it does give him Novacek to use as a wide receiver for a jumbo, and he could put AWOLT in there somewhere to help with the run game as well. So he definitely has options, and War Machine is pretty meticulous. I don't really see him making many mistakes. His only struggle will be when Vinny has a bad passing game and just floats the ball over the place. So when it comes to that. And then on defense, the Denver defensive line, which is either average or a little below average, but then the elite kicking ability of their kicker. The Detroit linebackers, which gives you Kofor as your guy, which I believe you had Kofor one season. He's a great nickelback too because it was 31 interceptions. I don't think Spielman is manable, but not lurchable because he's only 31 RS. And then you've got rounded out with the Seattle DBs, which Harper is sneaky good in a sense that once he goes into good, he's manable. And then unfortunately, though, the liability of Glasgow with his 25 interceptions there in the secondary. So I think that War Machine will do fine offensively with his team. Kind of his offense is all set. He'll figure that out easily. On defense, though, he's pretty much going to be manning, I think, Kofor, and it's going to be the Kofor show. I'm kind of concerned what's going to happen. He's going to do a lot of maybe gang tackling or, what he's got to do, corralling when if people are smart and they actually make their playbook to go at Kofor. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I think, Kofor's a great option to have. Maybe he's going to rely on the hidden stats of Nesby. Glasgow, I don't know. But he'll need some help on defense. It's going to come down to picking some plays and things, but I love his offense. I mean, to have Vinny with his 31 max speed and then a 63 MS running back, it's just, and then, Novacek as well. It's going to be a plus offense all the time. So it's going to be some ball control and just a matter of him finding a way to get a stop with that kind of not so great defense. So
Yeah, I'm looking at the stream chat, and War Machine is talking to everybody about it, and he's saying in his scrims he is doing the Kofor D, and he's basically saying if he plays an elite QB, he's kind of screwed. So he said he's going to play ball control and control the clock, which he's very good at. So it's going to be. It just seems with this format, the theme, except for a team or two, has been, and grind it out. It's just going to be a grinded out season for a lot of teams, it seems, except for the home run ability of, so far at least, Jesus in the NFC East. Moving on to Minnesota, which currently in season 44 is Odell. He's in the NFC Championship game against War Machine. But this coming season it's going to be Zur. Zur took Cincinnati as his QB, which gives you Boomer. I have never had a good time with Boomer. Prime is in love with Boomer. Who knows? I like Boomer, but I think you have to play with him correctly. I don't think Boomer caters to Zur's back and B mentality, so I don't know what's going to happen there. Maybe Wilhelm will get some snaps. He's got the Pittsburgh running game, so he's really. I actually, for those who don't remember, ran for over 1,000 yards with 38 MS Worley as my primary running back, and only a 44 QB. But I just don't see Zur being dedicated enough to do that. Although you can use the Pittsburgh running backs in a multitude of different ways to play conditions with them. Hodge and tight end or what have you. But once again, I just don't understand. He got his elite wide receiver, which he always does, this time with Prison. But, he could put Collins at the other wide receiver spot with his 50 MS. I just don't understand how you're going to bomb the ball to Rison with Boomer, because it's just Boomer does not cater to that type of offense. So that's kind of weird to me. And he rounds it out with the Buffalo offensive line, which is above average, and the Buffalo tight ends, which you can use McKellar anywhere. He's an above average tight end. Defense, you got the Tampa Bay defensive line, which sucks, but they have the great kicker, Christie. You get the San Francisco linebackers, which are good. You got Romanowski and Haley. And I'm missing, you got Millen, and then I'm missing one. DeLong? I think it's DeLong. So I think obviously Romanowski and Haley. Romanowski, I believe, you can use as nickel. Haley, obviously, probably LB4. And then you got the Green Bay DBs, which are just a dumpster fire for the most part. Sometimes they come through, sometimes not. But I don't know. I think Zur is going to be in, or try to be in, shootouts where it's just going to. I think he's going to find out the hard way personally that Boomer does not cater to the type of offense he's used to running. What do you think?
He'll definitely have to do something different. It's nice that he got a 44 quarterback with Boomer, but that kind of defeats the purpose of having Boomer. The running game is not a major threat, so the offense doesn't make a lot of sense to me, and the defense doesn't either. There's just not much there. It's confusing to me to look at, but unless he can make the Boomer to Rison connection work, it could be kind of a tough season for the Vikes.
Yeah, I think this is probably the worst team in the division, to be honest with you. So we should probably talk about that too. Obviously, I think Chicago is the best team in the division and the best team we've gone over so far. I would say Minnesota is the worst team in this division. I would say in the NFC East, just looking back, who do you think? Dallas is probably the best. And then who do you think is the worst? Phoenix?
Phoenix, for sure.
Yeah, so that's what I thought too. So there you go with that. Okay, let's move on to the NFC West. Drake going back home to NFC West. We've got Drake taking Joe Montana and obviously Steve Young. So, it's an embarrassment of riches. If Montana goes down, you can change your offense and play the Steve Young game, but Montana's fantastic. You get the Seattle running backs who aren't going to keep anyone honest, so it's basically going to be a Joe Montana show. He does give him John L. Williams to throw CCs to, but he does have Lofton and Reed to throw to as well. Andre Reed, one of those. I don't know. Odell said something last season where even though Brew has proven that running speed doesn't really matter except for that weird thing with Okoye, on offense because everyone's rushing power is 69, that Reed's 25 running speed instead of 38 or whatever it is, like everyone else, or 44, affects him to throw burn routes to him. So I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, Drake should have no problem making the connection to Reed. And then he's got the New Orleans offensive line, which will give him his 44 MS kick returner. And obviously the tight ends or whatever. On defense, Houston defensive line, I don't think that gives him anyone noteworthy to man.
Sean Jones.
Is Jones manable?
Yeah.
So it gives him an option to man someone on defensive line. He's got the Dallas linebackers, which, I mean, Jimmy Jones is too slow to lurch, but you can use him, I think, to man him a little bit, and that's pretty much it. Maybe Lockhart, maybe Norton. I think they're all the same, to be honest. I think Lockhart might be the same as Jones or close to it. And then the Buffalo DBs, which, they're really just not good. I think the Buffalo DBs are pretty weak. So Drake is going to be in some passing shootouts or try to just pass the ball a lot, obviously. I don't see him running the ball very often. I don't see him really stopping anybody either. I mean, I guess he can man Odoms, but it's like manning a nickel linebacker in your secondary, to be honest. And he's just that speed where you're just fast enough to be too slow at the 44, 56 level instead of 50, 63. So, but
I guess, I don't mind this team. Obviously, having Joe Montana is amazing, and you pair him with Reed, and that's a great combination. I would have liked to see him get a 75 rec guy, but still, it's going to be awesome. A couple of 38 max speed guys for running backs that they can do conditions with. Maybe you can sneak some runs in there. And defensively, Lockhart's probably the best linebacker they have there, but he's still marginal. But they can still play conditions with Kelso and Jackson there. If they bump up to good, they can be usable. So it's not terrible. I think you pick some plays, you should be okay on defense, and then no one's going to stop Joe. So,
yeah, maybe you're right. He's in a tough division. Prime and Nas have been, lighting it up for multiple seasons in a row now, the AFC West. So he's just in a tough division where he's got to play those guys twice, and it's just going to be interesting out there. Moving on to what's next here. Is it Atlanta? New Orleans. Who am I missing? Atlanta. Who comes before
San Francisco. Yeah, so next is Atlanta.
Oh, yeah, Atlanta. I missed San Francisco. I was trying to look down the list. So you got Prime. Prime took the Rams, took Everett. So Prime has gone from every season now has graduated his QB. He used to be in love with Young. Steve Young took him like 4 seasons in a row. Then he was in love with Ken O'Brien. Last year he was in love with Boomer Esiason. Now we're graduating again to Jim Everett. So Prime, I have to say, I don't know how he does it. And he has an uncanny ability to make cross-field throws. I don't know what the hell goes on with it. He says it's like the angle or something, but he'll be relying on that with Everett. He's got the Tampa Bay running backs. It gives you Cobb at your tight end, your big jumbo guy, and Gary Anderson at 50 max speed. I think who also is Gary Anderson also 50 receptions?
Yes.
Yeah, so I mean, hypothetically, if need be, he could be at wide receiver. You won't need that, though, because you've got Ernie Jones and Roy Green and Ricky Prohl, God bless him, at wide receiver. So you got guys over there, even though they're all kind of slow. And then you also have Keith Jackson. I think he actually plans on making Keith Jackson. I thought he actually reached on the Philly offensive line when I looked at the picks around where he took them, just to get Keith Jackson when he just is now dealing with the crappy Philly offensive line just to add Keith Jackson. When now, I mean, he's got so many guys to throw to that he doesn't need to. But he does have Keith Jackson is 50 MS, so my guess is, he's going to have obviously Gary Anderson running back, Cobb at tight end, Keith Jackson at wide receiver 1 or 2, probably 1. I don't know whichever one he likes throwing to better. He's probably going to put Roy Green at the other one, and he's going to probably be sitting Prohl, which, I mean, I don't know. That's just my guess. But he's got the Cincinnati defensive line, which doesn't really get you anything. I think they have an average kicker in Couric. And then the Phoenix linebackers, which I think that gets you just Harvey, and pretty much that's it. And then he's got the Miami DBs, which as a whole are okay. Oliver and Williams are both exactly the same. So he gives him two guys to man who are just fast enough to be too slow. I'm going to use that term this whole draft review too. Why not as well? So I think that, he's got players. I mean, the theme of this draft is everyone is going to have holes because of the way the draft format was. But, I mean, this seems to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, a pretty complete team. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it's actually really well balanced, especially getting Keith Jackson was kind of important to have a nice target for Everett, and then obviously a good running game as well with Gary Anderson is going to be solid. And then the defense with the safety twins from Miami, and he's got a linebacker to use. So it's a balanced team. There's maybe not anything too elite after Everett, to use offensively or defensively. But people have done this before. I like it's always nice to have at least one elite player, and I think especially in formats like this, you want to go for value. You got some value, but it's nice, especially in the top half of the draft. We're getting further down here with his pick, but you want to get an elite player with some value if you can. But make sure you get an elite player because those won't be around in like the third round and maybe not even part of the second round. So. No real elite player here. You could argue that maybe Everett is, but he's definitely a very good player. Then not too much after that, but it is balanced. So I think he should be effective.
Sure. Next is San Francisco. Now, this is something else. I'm changing my screen here. I'm trying to see. Oh, there we go. Now you can see New Orleans. Good. San Francisco has the Pittsburgh quarterbacks, which if you don't know how to use Brister, you shouldn't. But I'm just going to say that out loud. But he does have Marion Butts, so obviously, as Tadeos told us over and over again in last draft review, if you have the fast running back, you can have a QB like that. Hence Elway with Humphrey and so on and so forth. So and Schrader with Jackson. So, so as long as Butts doesn't get hurt and you know how to use Brister, you can use him. Obviously, you got Strom as a backup, even though he's only 38 PC with his 44 passing speed. But he has the Pittsburgh wide receivers, man, and it's just, so basically, his only target, Lewis Lips you got there as well, I suppose, but his only target is basically Steve Jordan from his Minnesota offensive line tight end pick. He gets the 50 MS kick returner, but man, it's just passing. It's going to be tough if he has to play from behind. I think he's in a lot of trouble. And then, which is probably going to be likely, to be honest, against Nas, specifically Nas and Prime. Then on defense, he's got the New England defensive line, which you love because of the Ray Agnew nickel option. He's got the Denver linebackers, which, you get Mecklenburg and Fletcher, but Fletcher's really small. I think he's only 38 hitting power, so he can get tossed around. And then the San Diego defensive backs, which gives you Bird, and I think actually you can probably man Seal too, right? If he goes into good, I believe. Or maybe not even if he goes into good. I think Seal might be manable too. Maybe.
Even in average, he's one of those just slow enough guys. He's that 44, 56 guy who's fast enough. So in my opinion, fast enough.
Yeah, and then obviously Bayless and whoever else is on their secondary. So I'd say that this team is. It's clear if Bobby Humph or if Marion Butts gets hurt, this team is screwed. They're not moving the ball. It's just not happening because they have no one else to run the ball. I suppose you could put Harmon at wide receiver you want to as well, but the fastest guy in this team after Butts from running game is Harmon at 31 MS. So he's screwed if Butts gets hurt. Or I don't see how people just don't pick run against him nonstop and then make him beat him. And even if Brister's throwing a wide open guys, they might drop it because of his low pass control. I mean, it's just, I'm not sure. I mean, his defense, he's got a lot of defense where he can stop people if he plays correctly, but his offense, he's really just putting all his eggs in the Butts basket. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the first pick was great. He gets the San Diego DBs, which is the last one with an elite group, Elite and Bird. So a good get there to get the last really elite DB in the draft. And then the second round, he gets Butts. So great start. And then I think it's just a bit of an overdraft of defense. I mean, Denver has a couple nice linebackers, which is nice, and Agnew is great. But do you need all of that? I don't know. When you kind of missed out both on quarterbacks and wide receivers. I mean, Steve Jordan, he took Minnesota's O-line in the third, which is probably a little early too, but it's only 7 rounds, so it's hard to say. But you're kind of missing some playmakers there. It looks like it's kind of like you can almost say this is like the OG Pitt team, but with Butts. So maybe that's better, but it's maybe not quite as good on defense, but still pretty good. But he's going to need to get some stops to make it worthwhile.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there. Now down to Nas, and I gotta tell you, man, I don't know what's going on here. So Nas had one season, a couple of seasons ago, where he got stuck with Billy Joe Tolliver, and he actually ended up going, I think, 10-6 that season, and going to round 1 or 2 in the playoffs. After a slow start, he kind of turned it on, but he's got the fast running back in Thurman Thomas, which will be helpful, I suppose. And I think if Nas learned how to play with a high passing speed QB a couple seasons ago, so he's familiar. But I mean, my issue here, he has no one to throw to. I mean, the Chicago wide receivers are a joke. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know what he's doing. The people who are in the tight end slots for the draft for the offensive line tight end for Atlanta are just not fast, not good, unless Sean Collins. I'm gonna look. Unless Sean Collins is in. No, he's not. It's Gary Thomas. It's Gary Wilkins and George Thomas. So literally, I don't know who is Nas throwing to. I mean, he's got Thurman Thomas. I mean, you got Jimmy Muir you can throw in that tight end to block, and that's it. And he's literally throwing to 31 MS wide receivers, and that's it. 30. It's just. I mean, there could be drops. There could be whatever. I mean, he just. If Nas gets behind by a couple touchdowns, aside from just basically putting Thurman Thomas at wide receiver and trying to chuck the ball with Burline, I don't know what he's going to do. Now on defense, it's a different story. He's got the vaunted Raiders defensive line who should crash some lines. So I think exactly what I was talking about with the reach. I know you said Jackson was a good pick for Prime. He's going to have a hard time. Prime's going to have a hard time versus the Raiders. Or versus the Raiders' defensive line, because they're just going to tear through that Philly offensive line. So the Raiders' defensive line, part of me, is going to tear through the Philly offensive line when Nas plays Prime. And that's big because they play twice, and it's usually for whoever wins those games is the division winner. And then, so you have two manable guys in the Raiders' defensive line who can also be nickels, I believe, in Long and Townsend. And then you've got, Chicago linebackers, which just gives you Singletary, and that's it. But, I mean, Singletary changes the game. So now you've got literally, I believe, like a 75 HP guy on the line, either LB1 or LB4, I would assume. And then you've got, the 69 HP guys, or I think they're all 69. One of them might be 63, or two might be 63 of the Raiders. And, I mean, it's just he's got a big front four, front 5. 4 out of the 5 in the front. Plus, I think Hampton, correct me if I'm wrong, is 63 HP as well. He can throw on the other side. So he's got a big front 5 that he throws on the line here on defense. And then obviously the Giants DBs, where you have Everson Walls, you can man. I think Greg Jackson, you can man. So, I mean, I think someone led the league with interceptions with Walls a few seasons ago with like 15, or something like that. So I don't know how Nas is going to move the ball besides screen passes to Thomas and running with Thomas, but his defense should be scary. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, again, it looks like a bit of an overdraft on defense, but it's something that he clearly wanted to create, and you can't argue with any of the things he has on defense. It's a great defense. Doesn't hurt to have Thurman Thomas. but it's going to be hard to get people to not pick run. But maybe that's what he's counting on. And it's going to take good play selection offensively, picking pass when they're picking run and vice versa. Ideally they're going to have. The problem is with Wild J is that even when you have open guys, you can miss them, but maybe they'll be going too slow that he can't. I don't know. It's a different team. Offensively, it'll be a challenge for him, but again, he's going to need to get some stops to make it worthwhile.
Man, so this is going to be something. So I'd say in the NFC West, I would say Prime has the best team because of the balance, and I would say. I would say Prime is the best team because you've got Nas with a strong defense, you've got Drake with a strong passing game. Yeah, I'm going to say Prime is the best team. I would say I don't know who has
I like Drake's.
You like
Drake's better.
Really?
That's just too much elite offensive power there. I think I take some elite players over a team that's kind of all kind of average or a little above average.
Yeah, I'm gonna just that's your opinion. I'm gonna disagree and think Prime. I'm gonna take Prime's team. The worst team, I'm gonna have to say, is San Francisco. It's just
I would agree.
Just because I just don't know. Yeah. But to be honest with you, I mean, San Francisco is literally the same model, kind of, as Nas, except it's not as good. But I mean,
they're both about the same, really, in a lot of ways.
Yeah, they're pretty similar. I would say Nas is San Francisco has the better DBs. Nas is the better linebacker just because of what a monster Singletary is. Nas is the better defensive line. San Francisco has the better offensive line and tight end. San Francisco has the better wide receivers. The running backs, I would say, actually go to San Francisco because of Harmon, because it gives you I'd just call it a wash.
Yeah.
And then the QBs probably not just because he has actually Burline's the same as Strom. I would say, I don't know I don't know. It's hard for me too because I'm thinking of the player too, and so I'm kind of partial. Like, maybe Drake's team is better than Prime's, but I just know Prime. I think Prime's gonna have a better season just because I've seen Prime play with teams like this, and I just know what he can do. So we'll see.
Sure.
So that's the NFC. In the whole NFC, I am definitely, without fail, picking Rico to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. I don't think, unless Rico has some weird Tecmo stuff happen, I don't see how Rico does not come out of the NFC as the best team. And I think for the worst team, I'm going to go back to, I don't know, who do you think the worst team overall in the NFC was?
Well, I think, to me, it's pretty close between Phoenix and Minnesota. Minnesota, when I look at it, just doesn't make a lot of sense. And Phoenix, aside from messing up the first pick, I mean, I know you got Chicago DBs, but I just don't like the rest of it. I think I could do more with Phoenix than I could Minnesota, though.
I think I disagree with you. I can't believe you would say any team with LVP Aikman is better than any other team. So I'm going to say that Phoenix is I'm definitely going to say that Phoenix is the worst team. I just think that I would rather have Esiason and Rison instead of Aikman and Duper and Clayton. I would rather have the Pitt
defense.
The Pitt running backs instead. Yeah. What defense?
Minnesota's defense is just they got Haley. That's all they got.
Yeah. But I mean, all you have on Phoenix is just the secondary, which I mean, go play TPC, go call Rams versus Bears, have them pick the Bears because everyone thinks the Bears are amazing, and just destroy them with the Rams because they can't keep up with the wide receivers of the Rams. Granted, those guys are both fast, but point being is, I don't know. I think Phoenix is the worst. I think Rico's the best. Do you think, before we move on to the AFC, do you think anybody in the NFC's team is even close to Rico's? Do you think he's the best by far? Do you think that someone is a close second? What do you think?
In the NFC, I don't see a close second. I do like Dallas as a pretty good team as well, but Rico top to bottom, there's just no one even close, and he just really doesn't have a hole, especially if he's smart with how he uses his running backs. He's pressure's on because there's really no excuse for him not to do really well this year.
You heard it here first. If Rico does not make the Super Bowl, it's going to be a colossal failure, according to Vikingmoe and stamped approval by Hoff. So I want to see. I'm curious. Yeah. So, okay. Yeah, I know, Gats, that I guarantee you my team's the worst in the AFC. So anyway, going on to the AFC, let's just go. I want to do my division last, if that's okay. So we're going to skip the Jets there. We're going to start now, go backwards with the AFC West. So that starts with Rob. He's got the Atlanta QBs with Chris Miller and Hugh Millen. And Miller is a 31-44 guy. I think Nas just had Miller and did okay. I'm just concerned. Well, we can go. I'll go into it in a second. He's got the Rams running backs, which is a great pick. You've got Gary, who kind of fumbles a lot, but then you have the Buford McGee pick, which it seems like an embarrassment of riches, to be honest, because of getting the Houston wide receivers. Because what are you doing? So, I mean, I understand you got conditions. So you got McGee, Green, and Gary, but you got McGee, who's 50 receptions, and you're not even going to probably use him unless you're going to play him at running back and not play Gary, because you're definitely not sitting any of the Houston wide receivers. And then also being stuck with the Tampa Bay offensive line, who's blocking? Because if you've got all four Houston wide receivers in with your running back, and you've got the shitty offensive line of Tampa Bay, you've got a 50 MS guy, two 44 MS guys, but you have no one to block for them. So, I mean, I like it, and I mean, he can definitely throw the ball over the field, although it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the low passing speed of Miller. It's going to be just, I don't know what's going to happen with this offense. But don't forget, though, you can't forget the guy that Old Dirty Tecmo has, a man crush on, Ron Hall. Any team that has Ron Hall should just automatically be put in the Super Bowl. So on defense, he's got the San Diego defensive line with Carney is a good kicker. Is there anyone manable on the San Diego defensive line, Eric?
No.
Yeah.
No.
You got the Miami linebackers, which is basically Offerdell, who you can also use as a nickel, but he's small. Doesn't have high hitting power. And then I'd almost argue to keep Offerdell at LB3 instead of LB4. That's just my opinion. And then you've got the New England DBs. Am I looking right? Yeah, which gives you Lippett, which is always nice. So I kind of already said it. I mean, I get it. His running backs are strong, in my opinion, because I just like having a plethora of options. And his wide receivers, obviously, it's the best wide receiver pick from a value standpoint in the game. I just don't. The whole offense, to me, unfortunately, doesn't make a ton of sense, just how it's going to play out. Like, I don't necessarily know who his opponents are yet, and we haven't looked at anyone else in the West. But if anyone has a strong defensive line, I don't know what he's going to be doing. But what do you think?
So it's one of these things where you can't win the draft with your first round pick, but you can lose it. And I think he lost it here. I understand more than anyone. I'm so tempted by value in these drafts all the time. But like you said, it's value that you really can't use. He's got four guys like Ron Hall, you mentioned. He's not going to make the lineup because he's got to play all four of those wide receivers. And then he's got the Tampa Bay offensive line. He's going to be running for his life. I like the Rams running backs. You have nice value there, but you can't use them because no one's going to block for them because you don't have tight ends and you don't have, any offensive line. And then you have a terrible quarterback to throw to him. Now, I like the defense. It's just enough, in my opinion. Lippett's really good, and you got a linebacker to use LB4. That's just fine. But those wide receivers in the first round put him in this hole because the next set of wide receivers, the San Francisco ones, didn't go until like 17 picks later. So to me, it's a reach. If you wanted Houston wide receivers, you couldn't pick them there. And I know they'd be gone in the second for the second round, but you just can't take him that high. You have to take some other value. Because if you can't pair him with a quarterback or something to make it work, it's going to be a disaster. And I think this is a disaster.
Well, I mean, that's a key point, too. I think the Houston wide receivers were a trap in this draft because, I mean, I'm going to go back and look at the picks page real quick. I don't think it was possible to take a QB to pair with them. I mean, the pick before his in round 2 was the Jets QBs. Even the Seattle QBs went ahead. So literally, taking the Houston wide receivers that high, you are never going to get more than a 44 at best to pair with them. And I just feel like it's almost a waste. And that goes back to what I was saying before. If you got a 44 guy, you only need one elite wide receiver because the rest is just kind of, to my opinion, a waste. But regardless, yeah, I think that, in my opinion, if I was him, I would sit Duncan at least and probably put McGee down there, maybe to get just a tiny bit of hitting power, or Hall or whoever. I would definitely sit one of the wide receivers, and Duncan, who is the slowest one, is probably the best bet. Or not the slow. I mean, he's as slow as Jeffries, but his receptions are 2 notches below him. So that would be my 2 cents. But I agree with you there.
I think calling it a trap is the best way. I mean, it's so tempting. There's just the way, unless someone waited and took him later to actually so they could get a quarterback in the swing. That was the only way, and I think he just fell into the trap here.
Yeah, but I mean, if you're looking, the best quarterback that went in the second round was DeBerg, and that was at pick 2-4. So literally, I mean, looking at
that's just it. I mean, after there's not much he could have done differently. After he made that pick, it was kind of he sealed his fate at that point.
But I mean, even look at Old Dirty Tecmo. Old Dirty Tecmo took, or Diaz, whatever you want to call him. He took the San Francisco wide receivers, which, can you believe Rice and John Taylor fell to 123? I mean, that's just crazy. Right. But he could have done Rice Craig, but he refused to do, Craig with his passing speed, and so I don't even know who his QB is. We'll find out later. I didn't look right now, but I mean, that was the last option, to take a QB to pair with those wide receivers that could take advantage of it. I mean, Craig was the last QB picked with high pass control, and he was picked at 216. So literally, DeBerg was the last QB available to take advantage of those. So I mean, yeah, I think, unfortunately, this format, those wide receivers, or any good tandem of wide receivers, just turned into a trap. But we're spending too much time on that. So moving on to San Diego, which is the 2 picks below. Game High took, who was very competitive last season until the very end. Good job by him after a couple of subpar seasons, or a few subpar seasons. He's got the Denver QBs with the Chicago running backs. So once again, it goes along with the Elway, or goes along with the high MS running back with the high PS QB thing. Plus, obviously, you got Elway's scrambling ability. I would argue specifically also, too, because he has the Seattle wide receivers who are pretty much a dumpster fire, to put, and whenever I use Chicago, I do this. I put Neil Anderson at wide receiver and use Bailey as my running back. I believe, I'd have to go back and look, but I think Gatz had Anderson on his team and didn't have any wide receivers, and so actually had Neil Anderson at wide receiver. I think, maybe I'm wrong. I don't remember. But in his season of 44. But anyway, so he's got he's got Muster. He can put at tight end. He's got Bailey and Neil Anderson. He's got the Seattle wide receivers who are nothing. The Chicago OL, which is okay. But the tight ends just give you big guys, but they don't give you anything else. If you have Elway throwing a 25 reception Thornton, that's going to be fun. The Buffalo DL, which is the Bruce Smith show. But people have told me season after season they expect Bruce Smith to do all these great things, and they just always feel underwhelmed by him. So I don't know what the hell goes on there. The New England linebackers, which doesn't really give you much of anything. I think Tippett's okay, but not really much of anything. And then the Raiders secondary, which they don't have any hands, but they're all fast, or for the most part fast. Eddie Anderson, I think, is the only one who has decent hands. So, I mean, luckily he's got options if people get hurt. So, I mean, I don't know. I think that he's going to have to put Neil Anderson at wide receiver. And I think that, put Bailey at running back, make smart throws at Elway, don't be afraid to scramble. And then he might have, if he plays a good QB, he's screwed. And I wouldn't man Bruce Smith simply because I think he's more valuable trying to crash through the line. I would definitely move him around on the line to screw with people so they don't think they can just put their best blocker on him or they'll know where he is. And then I'd probably man Andy Ederson a lot, but I'm also a DB guy. But what do you think?
Yeah, the defense is fine. He might have trouble with that, dive run too. He doesn't really have a linebacker, and some of the sweeps might be a bit of a problem. But overall, the defense is fine. And I think the Chicago running back pick is a great pick. I mean, you get an elite player plus another really good player plus a huge blocker. So you get a lot with one pick, including an elite player, and that's really his team offensively. And if he's smart with Elway, I think he could really make this work. But you got to obviously be careful with John. But good offensive line to go with it also. So it's a pretty good team. It's pretty well rounded. I think you can make it work.
I think it's funny how you're on first name basis with John. That's
me
good.
And John Elway. It's just John and Eric. That's how we go.
That's great. All right, so now we're on to Tadeos, aka Kevin. He was actually on this draft review last year with us, our 3.5-hour marathon that we had. The Cleveland QBs, I am partial. I will tell you, QB Browns underperformed more than he performed for me this season, but I always say that about all the good QBs. The big change with QB Browns that most people don't realize is that his avoid pass block is very low. I think it's 44. I can't believe how many plays got blocked at the line. I actually had a play in my divisional playoff game versus Diaz where he blitzed, had a guy wide, I had Flipper Anderson wide open up top, went to go throw it, and he JJ blocked it with his linebacker blitzing me. And it just changed the complexion of the game. Could have potentially cost me the game. But so QB Browns is great. He's got the Indy running backs, which is going to give him Bentley at 44 MS, with obviously his 63 receptions, so kind of went all in on there. He's got the Minnesota wide receivers, which gives you obviously his connection to Anthony Carter. Also Hassan Jones if he wants. Chris Carter is a guy you can play conditions with. You get the Green Bay offensive line, tight ends. The offensive line is a little bit subpar. Tight ends don't really get you much. Ed West is, I think, a 31 MS, 50 HP, 38 reception guy. And then on defense, he's got the Philly defensive line, so that gives him Reggie White. Is there anyone else? Is Reggie White by himself? Does he have another good one over there?
No, nothing great.
But Reggie White can be used, if I remember correctly, as a nickel, right? He's got 31 interceptions or 25.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So then he's got the New Jersey linebackers, which gives him the Clifton amazing nickel package, as well as the Dennis Byrd LB4 option. And then he has the Indy DB, which I'll tell you, Indy DB suck, but I had a season I was playing, I think I had DeBerg or Sims. I had Phil Sims. Tecmo Bo was playing chicken with someone. I'm taking the Indy DBs. I played Tecmo Bo. I tried to CC Indy DBs the whole game. It did not get one CC against them the whole game. So, honestly, whatever. So, I mean, they could hurt him. They could not. It doesn't look like. It just depends on what quarterbacks he's playing. Obviously, against game high, it's not going to matter. Just scrolling down real quick. Randy Wags has the Chicago QBs at Denver, so that's not going to hurt him. Gatz has KC, so Gatz can hurt him with KC, and he's got the Rams wide receivers. So Gatz can really exploit Tadeos' DBs. And then I'm missing a team somewhere on here. Maybe I'm not.
Well, DBs are overrated anyway. I mean, I really like this team. I mean, Bernie Kosar to Anthony Carter is just going to be awesome.
It's going to be lethal. It's going to be absolutely lethal.
It's going to be great. And then I think if you want to grind, he can grind with scrambling and decent running back there with an Indy, and Bentley obviously can catch too. So I think if he uses his linebackers well, I mean, having Bird and Clift in both is awesome, but and then just let the indie DBs do what they do,
Yeah, which is good.
And just kind of see what happens.
They get destroyed on burn routes regularly. I think that he has the perfect team to be in a shootout. So if he gets in a shootout, provided QB Browns doesn't go into bad in the fourth quarter of a playoff game, like he did for me, he'll be okay. So
yeah.
Moving on down to Denver. We got Randy Wags, who is the current Lincoln defending champion. I don't know what other titles he has, but he took the Chicago QBs. That must have been a round 7 pick, so that's going to be really interesting for him. He's got the Cincinnati running backs, which gets him James Brooks and Woods. The Dallas wide receivers, which gives him, Irvin, Calvin Martin, and that's really it there. The Seattle offensive line tight ends, which gives him the tight ends aren't good. Heller and McNeil. The San Francisco defensive line, which is good. I think Carter's there at 69 HP. And Pierce Holt, I think, is 63, maybe. And then the Giants linebackers, which is obviously the best. It must have been his first round pick with LT, Pepper, Reasons, and I'm missing one. Who am I missing?
Collins.
And obviously, I know you're drooling right now looking at that pick. And then the New Orleans DBs, which are, they've got Massey. No one's manable in good. They're all 38-50 guys. And I mean, in average, if they go into good, they're manable. But with these linebackers, he's not manning them anyway. He's going to be manning Reasons if he's going to nickel, which, if anyone remembers, Rico led the league with Reasons. With interceptions one season with 14 or 15. And my guess is it'll be like the LT show, the Pepper show. Oh, Banks. What do you say, Collins? It's Banks. It's Banks. Reasons.
I said Collins.
You said Collins. It's not Collins. It's Banks.
I did say Collins. You're right. Sorry,
yeah.
my fault.
I can't believe I forgot about that. It's Banks, Reasons, Johnson, and LT. Anyway, so he's got options. So you can't really cater your offense to run at LT because then you're going to run, whatever. Plus, Banks is 63 HP. I'm sure he'll be on the line. LT, I'm sure he'll be at LB1. He's at 69 or 75. I think 69. He'll be on the line. Then you've got Carter and Holt. I think Holt's either 56 or 63. Carter 69. So you got a strong front five, or most of the front five. I just don't know how he's going to move the ball. I mean, he's got Cincinnati's running back, so he can run. But and he's been what Randy Wags does against people he can out tap is he basically just does all those motion ISO runs right at you, out taps you, and this goes. I lost many games to him doing this. But if he can't out tap you, I don't know how he beats you with this team. I'm just saying it now. Maybe he'll get turnovers. Maybe he'll be able to stop you. But I don't know how he scores enough points with this team unless he can out tap you or unless you can't stop the run. So, what do you think?
Yeah, it's hard for me to blame him for taking the Giants linebackers. They're incredible and give you so many options. I would obviously love to have them, but the next linebacking tandem that went was like 20 picks later, and that was KC. So he just might not have been in the best draft position to take him here. It'd be nice if he was later and could have gotten something better. Obviously, he's going for the big HP up front on defense, which should be pretty effective. We'll have to see how that lines up with offensive lines, but yeah, I agree. The offense is tough. Seattle's got some holes in the offensive line, so if he's going to rely on the running game, he's got to be careful. And it's otherwise it's everything else is slow. The receivers are slow, and obviously the quarterbacks are terrible. So he's going to have to be really careful and judicious there about trying to, pass the ball. And it's going to be a grind on offense, and then he just has to dominate on defense if he's going to make it work.
Yeah. I maybe would have argued too. I know he took the Cincinnati running backs. The Dallas running backs went the next pick. I would have argued maybe even taken Dallas because then he could have used Highsmith at wide receiver or just in some Swiss Army knife role. But regardless, yeah. So we'll see. I've seen Randy have a run first team only. He actually had the Colts QBs one season where he couldn't figure out, and then all of a sudden he figured it out and just ran nonstop and out-tapped everybody, so we'll see. And then moving on down to the Super Bowl representative of the AFC this season, like usual, Joey Gatz. We're on to Gatz, right? Everyone else is done in this division? Yeah. So Gatz took KC QBs. If anyone can make the Berg work, even with his 6MS, it's Gatz and his Houdini magic. He's got the Miami running backs, which gets him Page, at the tight end spot, as well as he can make Stratford, and if he wants blocking, Sammy Smith. He can play conditions with Logan, whatever. And the big thing here, he has Flipper and Ellard, so he's got two weapons to throw to. I can see Gatz will be throwing the ball a lot this season. Maybe going back to his back and B glory days of 10 seasons ago or so. I think that was season 33 or 35 where he competed against Brewdog. He's got the Cleveland OL, which is okay. Doesn't matter here. Indy defensive line, which has nothing really. The Philly linebackers, which gives him Jerome Brown and Joyner, which is good. So he can put Brown at LB1 or 4, and then Joyner at the other. Joyner's a little small. Joyner can be used as a nickel if he needs to, because he's got the Denver secondary, which has crappy Atwater, but Dennis Smith, I think, is his manable guy in the secondary. So I mean, Gatz can make any team work. Honestly, I don't really want to even critique this, just because it doesn't really matter who Gatz has at this point. He's just going to make it work. So, but obviously he's going to be throwing the ball all over the place. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, he really all he really needs is Ellard. He probably doesn't even need Flipper, but we've seen him do that before. But the offense will be tough. I actually thought the Miami running backs was a pretty good get pretty late. It gives them a lot of 38 max speed options to play conditions with, and Page is usable at tight end, of course, too. So and the only question is going to be defense. Does he have enough there? And I think it'll be a bit of a challenge defensively, but with what he can do on offense, it's going to be tough to keep up.
Yeah, we've seen Gatz do the one-man defense before with like Deion Sanders, and that's it. But Sanders is an elite speed guy. Right. We haven't really seen him do defense. I don't remember recently seeing him do defense where he's pretty much, I'm guessing, predominantly going to man a linebacker here. So I guess we'll see how it goes. But so going back through the AFC West, I would probably say, I don't know. Well, how about you pick? Because I don't remember. Which team do you think is the best, and which team do you think is the worst?
Well, not taking owner into account here, I think worst is easily, I think for me, probably Denver. Just kind of looking at that, you could probably question kind of maybe what they did with the Raiders, but I like what he did there. So I'd probably say Denver is the worst. Otherwise, I'm trying to think, what other team am I missing here? San Diego. Yeah, they all have some flaws, but I like San Diego as well. I think just with the firepower that KC has, though, I'd probably still say KC is the best.
Gotcha. I would definitely say that Denver is the worst, and with the best, yeah, I'd probably go with KC as well, just because, yeah, because I don't know how you stop them, to be honest, and well, it's gonna be interesting when he plays Randy though, and the line crashing through with a 6MS guy quarterback. So I'm not sure. I think a shootout. I don't know. I don't know. I think the Raiders. I mean, I know the Raiders secondary sucks, but I think they're up there too. I think they're up there too, man. I would actually. Do I want to say they're better than Gats? Philly, Raiders, Cleveland. Man, I'm gonna go Raiders. I think the Raiders are better than. No, I don't. I think they're close. I think they're close. I think they're a close 1-2, and then the rest of the division's lagging. So, anywho.
Well, what'll be fun to see Denver play Seattle. with that Tampa Bay offensive line. That should be interesting.
Oh yeah, I think it's going to be fun to see the Raiders play KC, just to see the shootout,
For sure.
the constant bombs. I can't wait to watch that stream. All right, moving on to the AFC Central. Almost done here, getting the home stretch. We've been going for about, let me take a quick look here, about an hour and a half. We'll be done here in the next 30 minutes, maybe a clean 2 hours, I think. So, okay. Going on to the Central, we've got, we're starting with, oh wow, where's our first pick?
Cincinnati, I think.
Oh wow, all the way down to pick 12. Interesting. We got Eifert sucked at Cincinnati. So his QB pick is Detroit, which obviously, this gives you the scramblability of where or Pete to play conditions with. And then he also took the Detroit running backs. So he must have taken the running backs first and then gotten the QBs. I think that that's going to play really well. He gives him a lot of speed. He doesn't really have anyone to throw to Webster besides Webster Slaughter. Eric Green is okay from Pittsburgh for the defensive line or the tight end, but this is going to basically be passing, run first, pass later, and then even when you're passing, he's probably going to scramble at least half the time, to be honest with you. I see a lot of running in his future. But you can put Mel Gray at wide receiver here, so maybe that changes things a little bit. If he doesn't, he should. And then if Sanders goes into bad, throw him at wide receiver and throw Gray in at running back if he wants to. So, yeah, this might be better. This might actually go okay. And then going on to defense, the Atlanta defensive line is nothing. The San Diego linebackers, Leslie O'Neal is pretty much the big guy there. I said Gary Plummer was on the 49ers. I was wrong. He's on the Chargers. Gary Plummer gives him another big guy to go on the other side of the line from a front standpoint to go against those tackles. And then the Detroit secondary gives him William White that he can play defense with. So he pretty much has Leslie O'Neal, the man, as well as William White. I think this team could play pretty well. I mean, he's got tough competition because of Tecmo Bow and Stahl are the two, had been the staples of that division. Stahl forever, Tecmo Bowl recently. So, but I think he's got a decent team here with that he can do work with. What do you think?
Yeah, it's really, when you think about it, it's really close to the OG Detroit team in a lot of ways. Just starting back to front with obviously Detroit DBs, but then you have O'Neal instead of Kofor, and then you don't have Jerry Ball, but you have an improved offensive line in Pittsburgh with a kick return game, a good blocking tight end as well. And then, like you said, I think you got to move Mel Gray to wide receiver to stretch the field for Pete. So it's going to be a plus offense, whether he's passing or running with Barry. The offense is going to be good. And I think the defense has just enough. He's got a linebacker, he's got a DB to stop most of the plays. So I think it's a pretty well-constructed team.
I will say that I probably, if he could have, which I'm not looking at the picks page, if he could have gotten a linebacking crew with a linebacker that had 31 interceptions, I know he's a linebacker guy like you are, and he prefers linebacker over DB, and I would have liked him because if he's going to man O'Neal, he's going to obviously have some issues stopping some better quarterbacks. But
yep.
Okay, going down to Pittsburgh with Tundrietti. We got the San Diego QBs. Now, I don't think personally that Emmitt Smith is fast enough to take advantage of Billy Joe Tolliver. From everything I know of what people tell me about using these high PS QBs. But regardless, he's got the San Diego QBs. He can throw Vlasic in there if he wants to bomb it. He's got Emmitt Smith and Swiss Army knife Alonzo Highsmith. He's got the Denver wide receivers who are used to the laser beams being thrown at them. So the Vance Johnson and Mark Jackson. The San Diego offensive line, which gives you Derek Walker, he's okay. Arthur Cox, though, underrated that he has a 63 HP, even though he's only 19 MS. And then you've got the Dallas defensive line, which I think doesn't really get you much. Noonan, I don't know if Noonan is good or whatever. Washington linebackers, which is nothing. And then the big catch here, the Tampa Bay DBs. So I mean, he's going to be manning Haddix the whole time anyway. So it really doesn't matter who else he has. Although he won't be able to stop the halfback dives, but whatever. So basically, what I see here is, play defense with Haddix and make good decisions with Billy Joe Tolliver and run like hell with Emmitt Smith. I think that's pretty much his formula to win here. What do you got going?
Yeah, I think considering obviously he took Tampa Bay DBs first, and he's able to get those at pick 16, it's incredible. That would have been probably my first choice for DBs. So great drones is obviously the best DB in the game, in my opinion. So that's fantastic. And then when you consider that and the amount of offense he was able to assemble after that, it's pretty good. I mean, Emmett's, he's a good running back, and then you still got speed at wide receiver, which I like with a higher passing speed quarterback. So, I mean, Vance will make you dance. Johnson's 50 max speed. So it's enough speed there to really, I think, make a good impact. And then you can always go to the pickle if BJ's not getting it done. So I like it. It's a well-constructed team. I mean, it's Haddix or bust, but it's not like you can get hurt. So you got great value there, and you still got a pretty good offense that can move the ball.
Yeah, and plus, even when Haddix isn't bad, he's still really serviceable. So, I mean, who cares? Moving on down to Cleveland, Vikingmoe.
I like this team.
Yeah, this team is great. I mean, just looking at it across the board. So you've got Marino, you've got Scott Mitchell. If for any reason you want to bomb the ball, you got the Jets running backs, which gives you can play conditions with Hector and Blair Thomas. You've got the Raiders wide receivers, which are a perfect complement, and actually, how much better would the Dolphins OG team have been with the Raiders wide receivers instead of with their own wide receivers, just to take advantage of Marino's passing speed. I mean, this is going to be burn routes galore. I mean, if I'm him, I find a way to get Grady on the field too, and literally just throw burn routes galore here between Galt and Fernandez and Grady and even Brown or whatever. I mean, hell, play all four of them. Who gives a shit? Because he's got the Phoenix tight ends, which aren't good. So I mean, literally, I'd almost play all four. But anyway, moving on. He's got the Jets defensive line, which whatever, but then he's got the average kicker of the Jets. The Minnesota linebackers, which gives him Millard, and Merriweather, I believe, is a decent nickel guy, I want to say.
Yep, 44 it.
Yeah, so you can put Millard at LB4 and Merriweather LB1. And then you can do the Cleveland defensive backs, whatever. It's just Vikingmoe was used to having subpar defensive backs, so it's definitely going to be. I think I watched him where his only usable guy on defense was Kyle Clifton, and he was fine. So he just played a lot of good coverage and did gang tackling. So it's definitely going to be the Millard and Merriweather show on defense, and then there's going to be a lot of burn routes here coming from Marino. So I like this team. I think this team is perfect for him. I think he's going to do well with this team. I think he's going to frustrate a lot of people. And assuming he uses Marino correctly and the correct pass plays, this is going to be really dangerous, provided he can make enough stops on defense. Because we all have had Marino when he's had a bad game. I played Chet Holzbauer at Madison last month, and literally Marino threw 4 picks. 3 overthrows, and I think 1 CC pick. So, Marino has bad games. So, regardless, though, what do you think?
I think it's amazing. And can we so getting Marino at pick 18, that's ridiculous. It doesn't make sense to me. And that's just amazing value there. And obviously, to get an elite QB that low. And then if you think about the Raiders, then with the next pick, and some of the wide receiver tandems that went before them. So, Washington, Atlanta, looking at the Rams, San Francisco, those probably make sense, but I don't know about Washington and maybe even Atlanta. When you get all that speed with the Raiders, and like you said, you can use all 4 of them. That's just so much speed, and then with Marino, it's just a perfect pairing. So that just fell into his lap perfectly. and still got some running backs too. So the only question is going to be defense, but obviously the Minnesota linebackers are excellent. And it'll just have to use Merriweather and Millard and make it work. But the offense should be really fun.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. So moving on to Houston's the last one, right? Yeah, Houston.
Yep.
Moving on to stall talk. He's got the Giants QBs. I had a season with Phil Simms, and I hated him. He just wasn't. I probably didn't use him properly, but it also gives him 25 MS sauce if he wants for scrambling purposes. He's got the Green Bay running backs, which will give him Haddix as his potential tight end, and then his jumbo tight end in Woodside, as well as two, or at least one, maybe two 38 MS guys to play conditions with in Fontenot and Thompson, I want to say his name is. And then New Orleans wide receivers, Eric Martin or bust, pretty much there. So he doesn't really have anyone fast to throw to. So he has there's no speed here to throw to from a wide receiver standpoint. The Denver O-line gives you Clarence K as a tight end, but I mean, unless you're going to put him at, which I actually personally probably would put him at the wide receiver 2 spot, and then put Martin at 1 and just go that route, or one of the running backs from Green Bay at wide receiver 2, either one. And then on defense, the Ram defensive line, I mean, I just hope that Lansford doesn't cost him any games by sucking at field goal kicking. And obviously their defensive line is absolutely atrocious. But he's got the Houston linebackers, which gives him Childress, and then the Phoenix DBs, which gives him McDonald at that just fast enough to be too slow speed, and then obviously, Lonnie Young. So it's going to be the Lonnie Young show, maybe some Childress mixed in there for run stopping, and then it's going to be probably just some smart passing and some grinding it out. It's just a shame that it's great that he got Sims. I'm guessing Sims was his first round pick, but it just sucks he wasn't able to get anyone to throw to. Like, looking back at the picks, I'm kind of don't understand. Like, so he took the Phoenix DBs, which makes sense in round 2, but then in round 3, he took the Green Bay linebackers or running backs. What wide receivers were left?
Well, they still had the Detroit wide receivers.
Yeah, I don't know why he. I think the Sims pick was a waste. Now looking at his order here, I feel like the Sims pick was a waste based on who he took instead. But to each his own. So I think this team is pretty well rounded aside from who he's going to throw to. I like his defense. I think he, aside from obviously the DL, which whatever, and he can run with a 44 MS guy. It's more about just who's he going to throw to. But it's Stahl. He always does well. Every season he's like 13-3 to 11-5. So I think he'll be just fine.
He's a good player, and he's really actually a really great defender. With this defense, we've seen with really elite defensive numbers when he has good players on defense. So he certainly has that. The Rams D-line pick is unfortunate, especially with the kicker involved there too. But to have that LB4 that he needs, and then 2 usable DBs, he's going to be able to do great things defensively. It's just the offense is a little underpowered and maybe not didn't fall maybe the way he wanted it to maximize Sims. But he can grind out drives, and as long as the defense is dominant, he'll be fine.
Yeah, I agree with you there. So I'm having a hard time picking the worst team in the Central because I think they're pretty close. To be honest, I don't see. Well, who do you think is the best team in the Central? I don't know.
I guess I'm partial to Cleveland. Just because the way the synergy with the Raiders wide receivers and Marino it's just juicy. And plus, let's not forget he's got a 50 max speed kick returner, couple 44 running backs. The offense is awesome. Just a matter of making the defense work. I think it's better than some others we've seen. So I like Cleveland as the best team.
So then, who do you think is the worst?
I'm leaning towards Houston, just to be honest, and it's not like by a lot or anything, but the defense is good, which is fine. The offense is just really uninspiring a bit, but it's maybe just enough. It's just maybe not as sexy offensively, but the worst, but not by a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say that. I can go with the Cleveland pick. I'm just a little frustrated with the. I'm a little frustrated with the defense of Cleveland. I mean, you could argue too that while you're the, yeah, I don't know. I mean, because look at San Diego or look at Pittsburgh. I mean, I guess it's the Haddock show. I guess you're right.
It's tough.
It's tough.
They're pretty good. They're all pretty good.
I'd probably say even with Haddock's, I'm probably gonna. I don't know. I think that the Central are all pretty well balanced. Are all. I don't think there's a bad. I don't think there's a bad team. How about that? I'm just gonna say. I'm gonna say I don't know who the best is. I mean, I could think. I could go with Cleveland. I don't like their defense, but I don't think there's a bad one per se. So I just think.
I think it's one of the best divisions. Really, I mean, take owners out of it. I think just at least with the drafting, I think it was well done. Cincinnati's good too. I mean.
Yeah. Okay, so now we're on to the AFC East.
Is this where I get to give the Buffalo Bills an F? Do I get to give them an F now?
So I want to be really clear that I'm not here to make disparaging comments about my draft at all. I appreciate Matt drafting for me. I told him very clearly from the get-go to draft in his vision and what he thought he should do, and that's what he did. So, I mean, if we're going to grade this team, it's not going to be me saying, oh, he should have done this, should have done that, should have done whatever. It's going to more just be in the context of the division and how it played out. So I just want to make that clear now. I don't want to sit here and just trash Matt. The only reason Matt even drafted for me was because you guys all made me do a draft while I was out of town, and look, the playoffs are still going on. So, shame on all of you. So anyway, going to the East, we'll probably do my team last, just so you can really twist the knife there, Eric. But we'll start with the Jets. We got Hock with Warren Moon, Dirty. He's got the Cleveland running backs. So obviously, Kevin Mack can play tight end, although he doesn't really need it because he's got the Giants wide receivers and he's got Marv Cook from the New England offensive line and tight ends, and he's got Metcalf, who is a little bit higher than usual receptions for a running back. So 38 MS for a running back is enough to keep teams honest when you've got Moon at quarterback. I personally, just for what it's worth, if I could have any quarterback in this game aside from QB Eagles, I would pick Warren Moon over anybody. I love Warren Moon. I actually personally like him better than Montana just because of his higher passing speed. But that's just me. Anyway, moving on here. So then he's got the Giants running wide receivers, which gives him the speed of Baker, 56-56. I guess if I could nitpick here, I wish he had some wide receiver to throw to that he could just CC galore with Moon, and he doesn't have that. I feel like Odell did the same thing this season where he has Moon. Actually, I think Odell has pretty much Odell's best wide receiver on his current team is Stephen Baker, the muffin maker. So I think that it is a tiny bit of a waste of a high PC QB. We already talked about the New England offensive line. It's okay. And then you got Marv Cook. Defensive line, you got Pitt. They're okay. The linebackers, New Orleans, which gives you equal guys on top and bottom, but you can't lurch. Well, lurch properly, I guess. So you can beat the lurch. And then Kansas City DBs, which basically is just Lewis that is the best guy,
Ross.
and Ross, and that's it. So I would say here. It's going to be Hawk tossing the ball all over the place, I would say, maybe scrambling a little bit with Moon. I don't see him making a ton of stops on defense. I don't think he's really a linebacker guy. Plus I don't see Hawk out tapping people, so where I think that'll put his linebackers at a disadvantage. So I don't know. I'm a little worried about Hawk on defense with this team, but I think he's going to be fully able to take advantage of the passing game. Although I have to knock him a point simply for not getting a high reception wide receiver to throw to, even though he did succeed in getting the speed.
It would be nice, I think, but this to me is a pretty classic Hawk team, in my opinion. It's very offensive heavy, very pass heavy, and you love the speed at receiver, and then Marv Cook as well. Metcalf's going to be running back, but whatever, you're throwing the ball. So, the defense will be tough. The linebackers for New Orleans are just okay. They're not, to me, even really good enough to use consistently. And same with the Kansas City DBs, they're just even slower than what you consider just slow enough. So whatever that would be. So defense will be tough. So he's going to need to score and score often. And we've seen a few teams kind of built that way. But Hawk knows how to run up some points. So that would be the key. And then, calling some plays on defense, I guess. So.
Yep. I agree with you there. So now we're down to Rockman, a new member of the NFC East. The Green Bay QBs, obviously you got Magic Man. His 25 MS is great, although his 38 pass speed is not. The Minnesota running backs, which gives you Herschel Walker and then obviously Fenny, although it's tough to play them both because of the race factor there. The Jets wide receivers, which is basically Al Toon and friends. Moore, I believe, is 3150, but it's basically Al Toon. He's got the Detroit offensive line tight ends, which both the tight ends are wide receivers who aren't good. So, I guess it's going to be the Magic Man to Toon show with throwing in some Herschel Walker because of his tapping ability and just kind of grinding it out. The Washington DDL is whatever, although Lo Miller is a great kicker. The Buffalo linebackers gets you Talley for nickel, which he won't need because of his defensive backs. It also gives him Bennett for his LB4. Conlon is also manable, and Bentley isn't, but who cares? And then his San Francisco DBs, which I think is one of the best DB tandems in the game, gives you elite Waymer and then high HP and fast running a lot. So I'd say, top to bottom, his team is actually pretty good. I would. This is a team. He has lack of hitting power. It's kind of funny that Herschel Walker has such high hitting power because the rest of the offense doesn't really have hitting power. So if I'd say my one critique of the offense is probably the lack of hitting power and how Toon's a little slow. But other than when Magic Man, especially low passes speed like that, you really need faster guys. But other than that critique, I would say this is a pretty well balanced team. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the defense. San Francisco DBs is going to be great and enough options there. I think the Buffalo linebackers was a bit of a luxury. Obviously, Bennett's fantastic and Talley as well, but are you going to really use them enough to make it worthwhile when you have two usable DBs back there with Watt and Waymer? So to me, maybe a luxury there. Could have used a little more on offense instead. The offense really looks a lot like kind of the OG Green Bay Packers, really, if you think about it. With Toon really just being like a Sterling Sharp who's in bad, but if that was the case, you would throw to him anyway. So, and then a 44 max speed running back. I think you got to put Fenny at tight end just to help with some blocking there. But so it's like OG Green Bay on offense, and the defense pretty good. But I think maybe a little early with the Buffalo linebackers could have got more. But otherwise, a lot to like. You can still grind it out with Magic Man.
Yep, I think I agree. Plus, with his tapping ability, he can also scramble as well. We're gonna go down to Humiliation in Miami. He's got the Seattle QBs, which I just can't ever tell anybody to pick Craig ever. Personally, me never, but also unless you have an elite wide receiver who's fast as all hell. You get the Philly running backs, which maybe he took because of Byers, so he can CC to Byers, which is great. But Drummond can get you your 30 MS guy, but you really need a better running game, because you can't rely on Craig to win games for you. You just can't, not with that lollipop passing speed. You got Page on the KC wide receiving core, and that's really it from a speed standpoint. I think it's 50-75. Once again, it's great, but it's not, to me, I just really think you need elite speed with Craig. You get the Cincinnati offensive line, which they're one of those offensive lines that I think is really troubling when it comes to our rating system. I think they've got an 81 HP guy, which just brings up their rating much higher than it should be. Does give you Rodney Holman, which is great, but it can take advantage. He's a 56 receiving guy, but not fast. The Phoenix defensive line, I feel bad because another really crappy kicker. At least the defensive line, I think Freddie Joe Nunn might be manable, but the kickers, DeGreco is tied for being the worst in the game, so field goal kicking is going to be a challenge. Cincinnati linebackers gives him Francis, that he can man, and then obviously the Pitt DBs, which is one of the DBs that you like. I like the Pitt DBs. They're fast, they're big and whatever, but I mean, if it's me, I just prefer a DB if I can help it. Like when you're comparing Rod Woodson to the other elite DBs in the game, I prefer better hands because I just think that's more impactful than higher hitting power. Like if you had the choice between Haddix and Woodson, you're always going to choose Haddix. And now if speed was a factor, I don't know. I'm kind of curious. Maybe we should, at a different podcast, we should have a talk about who you think the best DB in the game is, because I've heard people make the case for Carrier, and I completely disagree with it. But anyway, so I think this team, I really, aside from trying to just bomb the ball to Page, I don't know how he's going to move the ball. I don't see anyone picking run against him. So instead of some chicanery he's going to get on offense from Craig launching the ball to Byers and Page, I don't see how else he's going to move the ball on a regular basis. And he should be able to make stops on D with that defense, though.
I actually like this team. I mean, getting the Pitt DBs this far down is a pretty good pick, in my opinion. You're set on defense right there. You actually get a pretty decent linebacker later, which is great with Francis. And I don't mind the offense. I mean, you have obviously the back B going on with Craig to Page, and that will work just fine. And you still have Byers there as well. So how he's going to use him will be interesting, and Holman as well. So he's got some good weapons. I don't mind that. I mean, he's got two guys that have 38 max speed in Drummond and Sherman, who has some fumbling issues. But if he can, knowing that no one's going to pick run, if he can get 8 yards a run when no one's doing that, it could still work to grind if he needs to. And obviously he's always got the bomb whenever he needs it. So sure. I don't mind it.
All right, we're going to skip me and do me last. We're going to go to shut your mouth. We're going to go to Old Dirty Tecmo. We got the Phoenix QBs, which gives you Tim Rosenbach with Tom Tupa. Timmy's got the 19 MS, but he's got the low passing speed. He's got the Atlanta running backs, which is basically just Rozier and then nobody else. He's got San Francisco wide receivers, so I'd say it's a shame he couldn't pair a 44-44 guy with them, and he has to have a 31-44 guy instead. I'd probably take a knock there off him, especially when clearly one was available down there when he could have. So, but obviously you can't getting Rice that late. I mean, I think he picked Rice number 23. It's crazy. In NDOL. In tight ends, they're okay. I mean, the tight ends don't get you anything. NOL's average or maybe a little bit below average. But Green Bay DL, sneaky good. Bob Nelson, great drone. If you're not manning him, Tampa Bay linebackers, which are a poo-poo platter, and then the Deion Sanders show on at the DB level. So I mean, while the rest of the Atlanta DBs though are 50 interception, even though they're slow, so his secondary is going to get burned on burn routes. He's going to man Deion, maybe some Bob Nelson too, if he wants to do a nickel. It's basically going to, but I think that he can keep people honest with the run. I personally think when you've got Rice like that, a 50 MS running back is a luxury that's not necessary. He could have gone down to a 44. Maybe he got a different need, but that's just my 2 cents. I think he'll have no problem moving the ball whatsoever between his scrambling and his bombing and his running. It's just going to be, can he get stops with just basically a defense of Deion Sanders and Bob Nelson, and that's it. Which I think he can. but just and seeing what he was able to do with Troy Aikman and Kelly Stauffer with Ryzen, I think he'll be just fine bombing the ball. I think he's going to be bombing the ball a lot more than he even did this past season with this team. But what do you think?
Yeah, it's an interesting team for him because he's always been very anti-bombing the ball, but and he likes his tight ends in more ways than I can go into. But I've seen teams where he's got like all the tight ends at wide receiver and hitting power everywhere, and this team's the opposite, really. And if you want to use all the wide receivers from San Francisco, I mean, they got Sherrard who you need to put in at probably at 44, 50 guys. So a little less hitting power and more of a passing game here. So, and it'd be interesting that the thing is with Tim Rosenbach, with 2 M's, by the way, what will that look like throwing to Rice and getting that timing down with that slower passing speed and how fast Rice is? It's really, when the field gets short, it's going to be tough to sneak a pass in there to him even. So that'll be interesting to see how that works out and see how he does that. But the defense, I don't mind. I mean, it's nice having Bob Nelson and see how much he uses them. Maybe not too much, but Deion can definitely get it done by himself. So it's a pretty good team. I like it.
When I had Bob Nelson, I'll tell you, I used him a lot more than I thought I would. Actually, some games, the whole game, just because it worked better that way. And he is just a fantastic drone. It's funny to read the stream chat as we're going along here, just to see the disagreements in what we're saying and agreements and what have you. It's just kind of funny.
Well, no one's disagreeing with me, right? They're probably just disagreeing with you.
Well, to give you perspective, Gatz says, I quote, Miami is ahead of the rest. Miami is the best team in the AFC, in my opinion. Indy stinks.
Nice.
So, yeah. Thank you, Gatz. Anyway, so now we're on to my team. So just reiterating, I was in Hawaii. I let you guys draft without me. I put Matt DeGeorge, Dynasty, my podcast partner, in charge of drafting for me. I gave him no input, just told him to do his thing. And so I'd say going through this team, just going through real quick, it's the Indy QBs, which is the second worst QBs in the game behind Chicago. It's the Giants running backs, which are, a good value pick depending on when you get them. It's the New England wide receivers, which are, besides Fryer, who is still slow as hell, doesn't really get you much, although he has 63 receptions. It's the Rams offensive line tight ends, which gives you really slow Holahan at his 19 months, but he does have 56 receptions, and the Rams offensive line is decent. On defense, the Chicago DL can definitely use dent and nickel, which I have done many a times, and they have so they're all pretty big. The Pittsburgh linebackers, which are a plethora of fast people between Lloyd and Little, and is there one other one that I'm missing that's fast on, or is it just Lloyd and Little?
Just Lloyd and Little.
Yeah, so
Hardy Nickerson's underrated in the game.
Yeah, and then what am I looking? And then I had the Jets at DB, so you have McMillan basically at the just fast enough to be too slow, 44-56 level, although he does have 69 interceptions. So the only thing I will say about the picks, and then we'll go through the team, is that I was surprised that he picked the running back tandem in the first round that he picked for me, specifically because the Tampa Bay defensive backs were there, and he knows I'm a DB guy. And then compound that with the fact that the San Francisco running backs were still there for my next pick when he took the Jets DBs. If he wanted to go running back, I would say having Tampa Bay's you don't know how things are going to play out, but I would say having Tampa Bay's running backs or defensive backs with San Francisco's running backs is a better value than the Giants running backs with the Jets DBs. But other than that, that was the only thing I really focused on was just, but I just had Fulcher a couple seasons ago, so whatever. So going through this, obviously, I'm not the greatest with crappy QBs. This is going to be interesting. It's going to be the Jack Trudeau show. Which, fun fact, Trudeau was actually QB Brown's backup in this season in season 44 on the Bills. It's clear because I don't have any wide receivers. Anderson will be my primary running back, and Meggett's definitely is going to be my primary wide receiver. I don't really have a choice with that. I'll probably throw even Hampton in there or Carthon. I don't know which one is better in for some hitting power somewhere. And then for wide receiver, Fryer will probably go wide receiver 2, maybe. And then probably just keep Holahan at tight end, or maybe even put him at running back 2, depending on my formations. And then on defense, obviously, I don't know. I got options. So probably Lloyd at 4, Little at 1, and then you can use Lloyd or Little at nickel, I believe, or Dent, who is even higher. Probably use Dent, to be honest. And then if I don't want to use McMillan, but passing the ball is going to be tough. I'm going to have to make some good decisions here and learn how to bomb. I'm literally going to have to do some practice games and learn how to bomb it with Trudeau to make it, because that's pretty much going to be – there's going to be a lot of loading up against Otis Anderson for running. I would say in my division, I'm gonna trouble against Dion. He can JJ pick. Who else do we have here? I'm in trouble against Pittsburgh. I have to be really careful with Trudeau there. Or against Miami, I mean. I guess Lewis or Cherry, whoever you said on Casey. I'm just in trouble with Trudeau, so I just have to basically, I think, what is he, 31 PC? Or is he 38? I think he's 31. I think George is 25. I don't know.
Pretty sure George is 31 and Trudeau's 38.
Yeah, so I've done that before. I've had a 38 PC QB before. Maybe not as my primary guy. Maybe not necessarily with 31 MS. I would actually contend I might start George. I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. Regardless, it's clear what the deficiencies are here. I do think while my defense is strong, my offense is lacking considerably. But what do you think?
Yeah, that really sums it up. The defense is, just start with the good part here, is really nice. And yeah, like you said, you can say that first round pick with the Giants running backs, they were definitely the best running back tandem remaining. Does that mean you take them there? I don't know, but they definitely were the best remaining. So it's not like it was a mispick, but maybe with Tampa Bay sitting there, I definitely would have taken them. Even Washington DBs would have been nice there, but getting the Jets with Easy Mac is great. I love the Pittsburgh linebackers, and then I can see using Dent quite a bit actually as a kind of a nickel if you don't have like a mismatch on the offensive line to exploit. So great defense. I like that they have a good offensive line to run behind, but yeah, it's going to be painful in the passing game. But I think play calling will be important for you if they're going to call run a lot, then you sneak in some passes where everyone's open and just chip away. But it could come down to some of that timing to make it and making that work. So
yeah, I'd probably agree with you there. Just because by the time my round 4 pick came up, I guess. Well, you tell me if you could have. So he picked the Chicago DL in round 4 when the Falcons QBs were still there, I think, and the New England QBs were still there.
Yeah, that would have been nice.
Well, here's what happened. He picked, when the New England QBs were picked, he went offensive line because that was around the offensive line run was in. So he had to. By the time my round 6 pick came, there's no QBs left. So that's why. So I'd probably say he would have had to forego, all things remaining equal, he would have had to forego the Bears pick at defensive line and go a QB pick there. And then he could have picked Minnesota. He could have picked Atlanta or New England if he wanted to. So you basically forego the front line. You know, he'd sent me a message and saying he was going to make my defense strong as hell. I was on a volcano, I think, at the time, or like on the mountain or something. So regardless, I think the problem really boiled down to, and it's not a problem. I mean, we're going to see what happens. I mean, if I do well with this season, then I'll thank him, and I'm going to thank him. I thank him regardless. It's just knowing me and how I play and seeing what's on the board, I definitely go Tampa Bay
for sure.
Defensive backs in round one. The rest of it, whatever. Because I mean, you can leave the rest equal, still have crappy QBs, and end up with the San Francisco running backs who would have been the best on the board, I believe, in round two, I want to say. But regardless.
What? In that division, I think, unfortunately, I think your team's the worst. But I think probably, I have to say, I think Miami is probably the best in that division. I just really like that team with the Pittsburgh DBs, and then a back of the offense that's going to be tough to stop.
Yeah, I'd say my team is the worst, and I'm okay saying that. And then I would you be quiet. And I would say my only problem with Miami is I just can't stand Craig. I just can't take it. I am just it's so hard for me to like Craig. It just is. So, but I would agree.
So Indy then? Is it Indy that you like?
No, I'm gonna go Miami begrudgingly. Yeah. Or, I mean, you could give some love to the Jets, maybe, but they don't really have a defense. So, going now to the whole AFC, who's the best in the AFC and who's the worst?
I think I really still really like Cleveland a lot. I think it's going to be a Cleveland-Chicago Tecmo Bowl versus Rico Super Bowl. That's what I think it's going to be. I really like those two teams. I think things just fell together nicely for Tecmo Bowl, and Cleveland is easily the best. And the worst, I don't know. I'll have to think.
So is it my team? Is my team the worst?
I mean, it's definitely in the running. I'm trying to think if there's anyone else. I'm not crazy about Stalls, Houston. Just didn't really fall that well for him.
Yeah.
And so maybe no. So probably between Houston and Buffalo, I guess is where I'm at right now.
Well, I tell you, I hope I have a fantastic season so I can just piss on everyone's Cheerios and be like, I'll be like the LeBron James dragging my team to the championship. I'll tell you, if I can't get to the semifinals with the team I had this season, when I made a defense that sucked, I mean, my defense, you should go look at the stats. I mean, aside from a couple games where I got in shootouts with Diaz, my defense, for what a dumpster fire it was basically a two-man show between Jerome Brown and Manny Hendricks. That's all I had. And I actually had a really good season on defense. I was pretty proud of myself. So, yeah, it's going to be a long season. Maybe I should just go for QB Eagles and actually take him at number one, which is the theme of this pod, taking QB Eagles number one. Always take QB Eagles number one. It doesn't matter what the tandem. Actually, that's not true. As I said, if you could get an elite running back, elite wide receiver, elite linebacker, and elite DB, or three of those four, I'd consider not taking Eagles. Wouldn't you?
I'd more than consider. I would jump on that.
How many would it take? Would it take two? Was two elite guys do it for you? Is that not enough?
Well, no. Well,
does it have to be three?
I mean, if it's two, then one of them has to be a QB as well. That's not named QB Eagles. But,
Oh yeah, so that's
you
not
know
gonna
what I
work.
mean? Otherwise, it would need to be three.
So would it need to be two offense or two defense?
Uh,
I would say two defense. I think it's harder to get good defensive guys than offensive guys.
yeah. Well, plus defensive guys don't get injured, so there's that factor. But
Yeah. Well,
offense was what wins this league.
true. Well, man, that's pretty much. Geth says that he would do elite DB and elite running back would make him not pick QB Eagles.
Hmm.
He would do Haddix if he could do Haddix and a 63 MS running back. Well, that doesn't exist. Not with the tandem.
It doesn't, but yeah, I'd take that too.
Well, yeah, if you could get Haddix on oh yeah, I would do that too, to be honest, or something close. But anyway, well, anything else you want to talk about there, sir? We're going on almost 2.5 hours, a little over. But what are you gonna do?
Yeah, like I said, I just it's Rico's season to lose, so best of luck to him. But I think there's some really great contenders in the AFC as well. Some pretty well constructed teams there. Some interesting teams as well. But I think interesting to see how Rico does. And I think the AFC is a little more open. But like I said, I really do like Cleveland's team quite a bit. And Gats has a team he can win with as well. So it should be a fun season. And kind of a cool draft format. I'm sure it was a pretty fast draft, only 7 rounds. So interesting that this was Tecmo Bo's idea, and he got a pretty good haul here in this draft too. So maybe some conspiracy there, but you got to have some of that to make it interesting, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I appreciate you coming around, man. It's good to talk to you, and I wish you were still playing, but it's good to have you around. We'll have to do one of these again soon, and I'll probably be doing another pod before the season starts to preview the season and like who we think the playoff teams, division winners, and all that going to be. Maybe even do records this time, and then kind of go from there. But I think that assuming the winner of Odell and War Machine tomorrow plays Gats this weekend, we could probably start the season beginning of next week. So the next pod, if we do beginning of next week, probably going to be this weekend, maybe Sunday. I don't know. Maybe not during the playoff game or not after. We'll see. But Eric, thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. Come back on anytime. We can talk about anything you want. And I appreciate your help here.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Really good time.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Well, that pretty much wraps it up here for the Hoff and Dynasty show. Thank you, Vikingmoe, for subbing in for Matt. He was unavailable this evening. Don't forget to watch War Machine and Odell tomorrow. I don't know what time. I think they're playing 12 Eastern. They're playing their conference championship game tomorrow, 12 Eastern p.m., I believe. And then a Super Bowl, I assume, will be some point this weekend. If War is not in it, because I know he likes streaming so much. If it ends up being Odell versus Gats, or even if it's War, I wouldn't mind commentating it. So we'll talk to those guys. Regardless, but in any event, that's all we got, guys. Thank you so much again, Vikingmoe, and we will. I will be back next time. And now let's cue the music.